Hey guys, OG Albino here, bringing you guys another Showdown season movie. Yes, another one. I have a lot of leagues that just finished up that I really enjoyed my runs in, thought I had a lot of fun playing. And this one is a really interesting league. It's run by my buddy Kaz. It's called the Hoenn Khlazic, but obviously spelled a little weird. I'm sure you guys saw from the title. But yeah, it's a really fun concept for a league. So for those of you who don't know, in Showdown, a pretty popular format right now is like multi-gen leagues. So you'll pay a 9-week season. Week 1 you'll have an ORAS team. Week 2 you'll have an Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon team. Week 3 you'll have a Galar Dex or just a National Dex team or something like that. Gen 8 format basically. And they're a lot of fun. I'm playing one in Trick House right now and things like that. But up to this point, when this league started, I haven't played one, and Kaz wanted to run his own league with, some buddies and things like that. So it's a little bit more laid back and casual, obviously, via the format. And being the Hoenn stan that he is, we're only doing, Gen 3 formats during that. So we're playing ORAS 1 week, and then ADV draft another week. If you guys haven't seen my Emerald Open video, where it was another tournament, I guess, run by Kaz, who is just the Hoenn guy. It was a Gen 3 draft league tournament. We made it pretty far. I think we made it to top 8, where we lost to Ante, which is no small feat. I'm pretty proud of that. So we're playing in this season. We have 2 really fun teams, and I think it'd be cool to do a movie, but be able to kind of jump in between the 2 teams that we drafted, and kind of keep it fresh a little bit and things like that. So yeah, if you guys do enjoy the video, be sure to drop a like on the vid, as well as sub to the channel. We're on our way to 2,000 subs. I'd really appreciate if you help me out along that goal. And yeah, we're also doing a giveaway of Scarlet and Violet 2 copies. So be sure to stick around and be ready for that. I'm still kind of thinking about how exactly I want to go about doing that to make sure it's the most fair for everybody that wants to enter and, get a free copy of the game. But, yeah. Really quick, before we jump into our week 1 game, I'm going to go over both of our teams very generally, because it's 2 teams, so 2 draft analysis wouldn't be the best idea. We'll start with our ORAS team, which is going to kind of be spearheaded by big landers here. Now, I don't remember what pick exactly we had. I can actually check really quick. I know it was in, the middle of the draft. It was not very good. Let's see. So we have 8 on top. We were pick 12. And I really didn't see anything else that I wanted to use. Again, there were really good things left on the board. Like, Zern got Latios right after me, which was probably maybe even definitely objectively better than what I picked. Or Jason got Mega Scizor and things like that. So there's definitely better things on the board maybe. But I hadn't used Lando T in so long. I actually haven't used it in Generation 8. In general. And that's still true to this day. I haven't gotten a Galar Dex draft, so I want to at least get it somewhere. We got Lando T here. You guys know what it does. It instant pivots, it U-turns around, it knocks off items, it stealth rocks, it throws off big EQs. We might double dance to a win one game. We can spread Toxics, a bunch of different things. This thing's just very reliable, very strong, even when more defensively oriented, and does a lot of things very, very well. So I'm definitely really excited with it. And there was one singular Pokemon that I really, really wanted to use, that I wanted to pair with Lando T, because I felt like it kind of facilitated it very, very well. Next up, though, before we get to that Pokemon, we have Latias. Latias is solid in ORAS. It's a solid Pokemon in general, but I really liked it because it's one of the very few good defoggers. So we grabbed a good Defogmon here in case we were about to get Hazard stacked, but obviously just very strong offensively in a lot of matchups, which is Draco plus Psychic, and then maybe random Hidden Power here or there, Ice Beam and Thunderbolt. Now, this isn't Gen 8 Lottie that gets, Aura Sphere and Mystical Fire and things like that, but it's still very solid. It gets Wish, and it gets a really niche option in Tailwind for our next member, as well as Healing Wish, which I really liked for our next member. So these top 2 picks were really around my round 3 that I really wanted to use. Again, it was a more casual league, it was a fun friends league, so I wanted to use this Pokemon so bad, and I'm so excited it got to me. It's actually on the thumbnail, and that's going to be Mega freaking Heracross. Look at this thing's attack stat. Why does it have 0 IVs? Look at this thing's attack stat with an Adamant Nature, dude. 515. Nothing switches into this thing. There's just nothing that switches into the combination of close combat, knockoff, pin missile, bullet seed, knockoff, earthquake. All the things that regular Heracross gets, but with skill link and a 185 base attack stat, as well as sword stance and things like that. Plus, this thing is ridiculously bulky. It's not very fast, but 80, 115, 105, there's not a lot that's killing this thing in one, even with random HP flyings and things like that. You're not going to get hit very hard. Plus, we have Landers, so we're kind of making you pick your hidden power here a little bit, which is something we have to keep in mind. This is Gen 6, so hidden power's in the game, pursuit's in the game, things like that. So I really like Heracross alongside Landers. Landers can U-turn, facilitate a lot of good offensive positionings for it, particularly on fat grasses that think they can come in and take Landers EQs. And Latias can really facilitate this Heracross very well as well, especially with Healing Wish into it. After it comes in, maybe picks 2 kills, then it's at 10%. I can save that shit, come back in, Healing Wish up with my Latias, and then have a Heracross again. So I'm really excited about that. I like this top 3 core a lot. And then we went with a much more fat approach to this draft. I wanted to get an ice resist. As you can see, my team's very weak to ice. I grabbed Registeel. I want another rocker outside of Landorus, and it really gives me that, which I think is important. It also gives me a fairy resist, which I also didn't have up to this point. So Registeel, while it's a little bit passive, and sometimes I really don't like using it in a lot of teams, I feel like it's fine on this one. Especially with some picks we get a little bit later on. We can spread T-Waves as well, seismic toss things, toxic things like that. Again, we're pretty passive at damage output wise, but we're very annoying, we're very bulky, and if we play it correctly, we shouldn't get too exploited, if you get me. Then we grab Drapion. I want to get my dark type as soon as humanly possible, as well as my grounded poison, which this is going to give me. It gives me T-spikes, it gives me taunt, it gives me pursuit as well for fat annoying psychics, for potentially things like Latias, I suppose, which is great. And yeah, it's great. I love Sword Stance Drapion. I love SD Taunt Drapion. Is so good into like super fat builds, which I really like, and it has good coverage in like Aqua Tail and Earthquake and Fire Fang, Ice Fang, and things like that, to where it can, you know, really put in a lot of work. Even Whirlwind's a cool option on it. So we just used it in BBL, not as much as I would have liked, but that's probably because it's Uber, so just higher power level. It doesn't have the bulk to really stand out to a lot of those spawns. But in Standard, it's definitely great. 110 defense is nothing to scoff at. Now, I know we just talked about passive with Registeel, and how I'm not the biggest fan of passive mons, but I'm stepping out of my comfort zone a little bit, trying something a little bit more passive, and we get the fish. I'm not the biggest on the fish. Like I said, I have drafted this thing one time ever. It was actually my first ever championship team, but I dropped it like week 3 because like, dude, this one sucks. I can't use it. I got exploited, and I was like, nah, I'm good. So it's a little bit scary, but I think with Wish into more offensive members like Latias, Landorus, Heracross, that can kind of come in on things that might exploit the Aloe and, you know, exert a little bit of offensive pressure. I'm not too opposed to that. Maybe like a Fat Grass comes in on Aloe and we Wish and pass into our Heracross for free. That's great. It gives me another Healing Wish Mon, really opening up that Latias, which is great. We get knocked to disrupt items. We can obviously toxic things, be Waterfall or Scald. Probably Waterfall in a lot of instances because this thing actually can break a few more cells with that 75 attack opposed to that 40 special attack, which is really bad. But again, this thing isn't here for damage output. It's really here to support the team, to knock off things, wish things, healing wish into mons, things like that. Maybe throw out some scalds and toxics and things like that to spread some status. But obviously, I shouldn't expect my Alola Mole to do any damage, so I can't play it in a way that I'm expecting it to have good damage output. Okay, next up, in ORAS, you should know, or as most people should know, the fairy pool is pretty limited, so I wanted to grab one, and there was still one that was really good on my team that fit, left for my second to last pick, and Togekiss. Togekiss is a great mod on the gen. It also gives me another Defogger, which is great, so 2 forms removal, really opening up Latias a little bit there. It can, again, also Wish, which is a really slept on aspect of Togekiss and Latias, honestly. Like, if most people looked at my team and saw, you know, what I had, they think, like, Aloe's here to Wish Pass and things like that. But Togekiss and Latias can do it just as well, which I really like. Again, another Cleric, which I think is really important on a team like this, that's really going to function solely on the back of Mega Heracross and Landorus Therian. I think my whole team kind of rides on that really heavy. We can Baton Pass for momentum. We can Nasty Plot up. We can Thunder Wave and Air Slash flinch things down. This is a very reliable Pokemon. Very annoying. Gives me a good Dragon check as well. That's not exploitable like Registeel. So I like them on a lot. And lastly, where's my ground resist besides Mega Heracross and Landorus? I wanted something to take a little bit of pressure off, as well as give me a little bit of spiky. So we grabbed a big Quillet in here, which is a little bit of a joke pick, probably to some people, but between Super Fang and Taunt and Spikes and Synth and Sheep Bomb and you know, different cool options like that, this thing is actually not that bad, really. I really don't think it's that bad. It's again a little bit exploitable and a little bit passive. But with an Eviolite, this thing is very bulky from the Fizdef side, so I'm a big fan of Quilladin, and it's a very solid mon. Okay, that's our ORAS team. It's only 8 mon in this league. Now we could jump onto our ADV team, where I actually had first pick overall. And you'd think, man, Owen, you just used Salamence in the Emerald Open. Maybe you're going to try Metagross. Maybe you're going to try T-Tar. Maybe Snorlax. Maybe something like that. You're wrong. I am super drafting Ments. I loved using it. It's amazing in this format. That's my favorite Pokemon. If Ments is like a debatably top 1 Pokemon in the format, and I get the chance to use it as my favorite mon, no shot I'm drafting anything else. So I'm really excited to use Ments again. If you guys haven't seen the Emerald Open movie, please go watch it. It was so much fun. We had a lot of fun games, and we had a really fun team with like Ments plus Starmie, which was nuts, and a lot of really cool options. Blaziken, and it was a lot of fun. So I'm really excited to do ADV again, especially with my boy Ments here. Whether it be Dragon Dancing sets, Wish bulky sets, it doesn't get Roostus Gen. Remember, this gen the mechanics play way differently, the physical special split, things like that. So for example, moves like Crunch and Dragon Claw are special attacks opposed to physical attacks. So, like Dragon Dance, Hidden Power, Flying, Earthquake, Rock Slide usually just kind of wins a lot of matchups on its own. Choice Band is great, but I also like Wish, Bulky, Fat Ments with like Toxic and Dragon Claw and Flamethrower and things like that. Can be really, really annoying for a lot of teams to deal with. We can even run like Refresh Shit. So, it does incredible offensively in a lot of matchups, and it's very solid defensively with Intimidate in a generation where there are no Stealth Rocks. So we don't have to worry about rocks. It's a Spikes Immune Mon, which is always very, very clutch. Next up, we grab Cloyster. No Starmie this time, but I grabbed a very solid double Ice Resist here in Cloyster. It's a great spiker. It gets Rapid Spin, it gets Boom, and it resists the thing that Mence doesn't like, which I think is very, very nice and very, very important. So I want something that really, really took on those bulky waters, or at least pivoted into them well as a lot of those, really those bulky waters and things like that. So Cloyster's going to do that as a spike setter, as a rapid spinner, things like that. Random Hidden Power Ices, Cloyster's going to pivot in. It's a great physical wall as well. With that 180 Fizz Def, it can be very, very annoying in switching in a lot of those offensive spikers, honestly, and just beating them 1v1, really kind of preventing spikes against my team. And then for those fat waters, we especially have a great pick on our next pick on our wheel in Celebi. This thing beats pretty much every bulky water in the format. Obviously, they can Ice Beam me, but with the bulk that Celebi has and the bulk that you can usually afford in a matchup, it does really well, especially with 32 PP Recover. We talked about that with Starmie in the last video. Recover is 32 PP this gen. You can just PP stall mons out of moves. Like, you don't have enough Ice Beams to break through me, even boosted. So that can be really nice. It can be Calm Mind. It can be Baton Pass, and that's something important to note. In ADV, the Baton Pass ruling, like in the standard tier, is that you can pass a boost from one source, and that's it. So you can pass a boost from one source and, Baton Pass out. So, like, I can Calm Mind plus Baton Pass to Celebi. I can get a Salic Berry and Baton Pass to Celebi, but I can't Calm Mind and Salic Berry and Baton Pass out, if that makes any sense. So it's not just one boost, it's one source, if that makes sense. So Calm Mind plus Baton Pass is a great tool for potentially Ment or our next member, and can really put in a lot of work. We can run with Heal Bell sets and kind of recover our team a little bit. We can run like weird Swords Dance Baton passing sets and a bunch of different cool things. We can dual screen up if we really need to as well, and do a lot of really fun things. Nat Cure plus Rest even, if that ends up being a thing, but I mean, we have Nat Cure, so we can just recover plus switch. But yeah, it does really, really solid, and I'm definitely really excited. Leech Seed, Hidden Power Grass, Psychic, or even Giga Drain, which isn't as good this gen with only 60 base power and 8 PP. But we can obviously run Hidden Powers if we run Giga Drain, so, and get a little bit of recovery. So yeah, I really like Celebi. I think it's a great Pokemon, and yeah, I hope it does a little bit of work this season. Next up, instead of having defensive checks to those fat waters and things like that Mence really doesn't appreciate, we grab Jolteon as a more offensive check to this thing. And this is the one format where Jolteon is good, the only single one. 130 speed, 110 special attack with T-Bolt plus like HP Ice or Grass coverage is really just honestly almost perfect coverage in the tier. It stings very hard, especially with Baton passing from Celebi, or a member we're going to get a little bit later on. This thing can hit incredibly hard. I love Sub-Toxic variants of this thing. I love Sub-Thunder Wave variants of this. It gets Baton Pass itself to grab momentum, even though Volt Switch isn't in the game. And again, it's just very strong. Again, you only have 2 offensive coverages, so a lot of times, even if you're offensive, you're going to be able to fit Substitute or Thunder Wave or Heal Bell or Toxic or whatever it might be, and you'll be able to go to town pretty well. So yeah, Jolteon is very, very solid in this format. I like it a lot. And then I grabbed kind of another Ice Resist, as well as just a great overall Pokemon Disruptor and Big Hariyama. This thing is incredibly annoying, whether it be Bulk Up, Resto, Chesto variants, just Guts, all out attacking, strong sets, where we can like bait status and go to town or something like that, or be a Fire and Ice Resist, which we actually don't have good Fire Resist. It's only Mence, and that's it. So we want to take a little bit of pressure off of Mence in that sense. We can knock things off, which is a special move that has 20 base power this gen, so it's not going to be doing any damage to those Psychics and Ghosts that want to switch in on us, but it is going to get rid of those items, which is also incredibly, incredibly clutch. We can HP Ghost or HP Bug for those, Psychics and Ghosts and things like that might want to switch in on us. Fake Out for priority. It does a lot of things that regular Hariyama does. It has great coverage. It can be very, very bulky and annoying. I got messed up by like a Belly Drum, I think, in my top 8 game. So Belly Drum can definitely work with its incredible bulk on some of the more slower passive things. You gotta keep in mind this metagame has just a much lower power level overall, so there's a lot of things we can really, really exploit. It gives us a good rock resist as well, which we don't have, so it gives a Tyranitar check if we end up running into one of those. And the last like core member of our team is going to be Camera. This is a really fun Pokemon in this format. I like it a lot. With its mixed capabilities of fire and ground, one of its stats being physical, one of them being special, being solid on both sides and not needing speed in most matchups is great. Alongside explosion and hidden power of your choice, it is very hard to switch into this Pokemon in my opinion. Like very hard to switch into this Pokemon. So I'm very excited to see what it does. It's probably going to run the same moveset every week. It's going to be Earthquake, Fire Move, Boom, Hidden Power something. Or maybe an Overheat or something like that. Or maybe a Rock Slide. You know, things like that. It's going to vary between 6 moves, but it's going to be decently bulky, take a hit, and do some damage or boom on something and get a kill. So I think Camerupt is pretty reliable in that sense and offers some good defensive utility to our team as well as offensive utility. Then for our last couple picks, we didn't really have a ton. I thought I had really good removal as well as support for this Pokemon and when it comes to its weaknesses. So I actually ended up drafting Shedinja right here. Where, if you guys know, obviously Shedinja's gimmick is that it has Blunder Guard, so it can only be hit by super effective moves, but it has 1 HP, so it immediately dies if you're going to hit it. So, but I think we have pretty good, removal in Cloyster, and then we can switch around it a little bit, and maybe it'll force a little bit of prep one game or something like that. Who knows? We can Swords Dance plus Baton Pass, we can Hidden Power Ghost, and, you know, or Shadow Ball and Hidden Power Bug things, whatever it might be. His spawn's decently strong. We can even Toxic Tech things and, you know, just be a nuisance, see if there's any random coverage and kind of, you know, just disrupt other teams and go from there. Maybe we'll even run Double Edge, who knows. Then, lastly, we have Volbeat. Volbeat is a pretty meh Pokemon in general. It's actually a lot better in current gens where it has, like, Prankster and Encore and things like that, whereas this gen, the main gimmick I drafted it for was Tail Glow plus Baton Pass. If I can Tail Glow plus Baton Pass into something like Jolteon or Celebi or even a what do you call it, Mence? I guess Special Mence. A lot of teams aren't going to be able to deal with that. Now, Tail Glow this generation is +2 special attack and not +3, but it's still very solid in that regards. We can go with like Signal Beam coverage for physical stab because it is physical, or we can even go Bolt Beam with Thunderbolt plus Ice Punch to have decent coverage on the special side. Baton Pass, like I said, we get any other cool options. We can Moonlight, I suppose, to keep ourselves healthy. Light Screen, no Reflect though. We can Sub Pass as well. We can Thunder Wave things. We can trick items and just be a general nuisance. So I think for the price point that they were at, especially because we went so top heavy, these were 2 great low tier picks. But yeah, that's gonna be our 2 teams. Pretty fun stuff. Big Mega Heracross is the focus of the first one, even though he was around 3 big. And of course, Big Mence being the main piece we built around in our second draft. And yeah, that being said, we'll jump on to week 1, which is ORAS. Alrighty guys, week 1 rolls along and we are playing Chem and ORAS. You see a pretty terrifying team that they have here. I can't go over exactly what the whole squad was, unfortunately, because they actually ended up dropping after this week and Tiro took over and Tiro changed the team completely. So I don't really have a recollection of what the team was, and I didn't really prep in like a channel anywhere or anything like that. So unfortunately, I don't have the team, like, their full squad, but I know they have a Hippo, Jirachi, Rotom Wash, Terrakion, Fortress, and Reuniclus. Let's go into the team that we ended up bringing real quick. We'll swap over to a team builder. We have a Physical Scarf Lando. It's pretty solid in the matchup. It is our rocker, unfortunately, because I didn't put it on my registry, and you'll see why. It's a little bit of a weird set. I guess you just saw when I clicked on it. But Earthquake, Knockoff, U-Turn, Stealth Wreck does really well. If you look at their team, if I chip down the Hippo, get rid of the things like the Rotom, and I can knock off Rotom and chip it down pretty well. It's very good at revenging a lot on this team. I don't expect a Scarf Terrakion. I expect like a Bandit or a Life Orb variant because it does really well into me, so it gives me a good way of revenging that. Knockoff hits a lot of things really hard and removes items, particularly that Rotom and that Hippo. If I can remove those items, I'm in a good spot. And he U-turns around and puts me in a good position against the rest of his offense, or the rest of his defense with my next member, Mega Heracross, who does really, really well in this game. Pin Missile, Close Combat, Bullet Seed, Swords Dance. I don't really need Swords Dance, but if the opportunity arises where I need to SD in like a Fortress's face in order to kill it, I suppose I could do that, as well as a non-Whirlwind Hippo. If I SD, Bullet Seed just OHKOs it, which is great. Close Combat just hits everything ridiculously hard outside of something like the Reuniclus, which we can just Pin Missile, which is great, obviously. We can pretty much naturally take a hit from everything on his squad, too, so there's not a lot he can do. And we outspeed half of it, guaranteed. Potentially 4 out of the 6 members, and maybe even 5 if he's like no speed Jirachi for some reason, but I don't expect that, so very solid. Next up, we have our lead in a Black Sludge, Poison Fang, Swords Dancing, Drapion, knockoff Poison Fang, Swords Dance, and Taunt. The reason we're Poison Fang is because I really want to grab that bad poison on Rotom and the Hippowdon in particular. Again, really chipping them down for things like my Landorus, my Heracross do a lot of work. I'm okay with leading this and letting it get burned by Rotom in order to bait that Poison Fang or a knockoff into it, because I do have Healing Wish on my Latias a little bit later. If I can find the opportunity and I need to get it back for something like the Reuniclus, I can do so. We are Swords Dance plus Taunt to always beat down Reuniclus, which is awesome, obviously. And yeah, again, outspeeds a lot of his team, so it does really, really well. We can always taunt the Hippo and ensure that it never recovers up or gets up rocks or anything like that as well, which is nice. Then, we have a Choice Specs Latias. One thing I do remember about his team is it did not have a Fairy type. If we can chip down really just that Jirachi, we're in an amazing spot with our Choice Specs Latias. We can just rain Dracos and Psychics for free on this team. There's no Dark type, obviously, on this squad as well. So that's obviously really nice, and we do have Healing Wish in order to get back up our Drapion. I originally had Trick for a little bit, but I didn't want to trick a Specs onto like a Reuniclus that was already boosted up, because that could be bad if I don't have my Drapion anymore, or it's burned, or whatever might be happening. So I figured it was smart to probably just have Healing Wish to get something healthy again, whether it be Landorus, Heracross, or Drapion. Those are the main kind of guys that I was thinking of. Next up, though, we have our Togekiss, which is Metronome with Air Slash, Flamethrower, Roost, and Heal Bell. Another way so I don't have to waste my Healing Wish on my Drapion is I can Heal Bell it up if I do end up getting burned, which is obviously really, really nice. And honestly, Air Slash plus Flamethrower hits his team very hard. If he uses Jirachi as his pivot and I catch it with a pretty offensive Flamethrower, I'm in a really good spot with my Latias. I can potentially 2-hit KO him based on his spread with a Draco Meteor because we're Specs, which is awesome. And we can kind of spam Air Slash against a lot of this team as well and chip things down. Again, I'm expecting the Rotom to be very chipped from the beginning of the game because I think that's going to be his lead. And if I can chip that thing down, then Air Slash is pretty darn free, especially if it's poisoned. Like, we're in a pretty good spot. Then we have a Resto, Chesto, Cursing Registeel, which is very interesting, but I do think that it can win potentially. We're bulky enough to really take on things like a Poisoned Hippo very, very well. And once we get it to +1, +2, and things like that, and all our things are breaking through us, we obviously can just break through the, what do you call it? Terrakion pretty well. And again, if we get a poison on the Rotom, we very easily 1v1 that thing as well, unless it's a Pain Split variant. So I think he can do pretty darn solid. And yeah, with that being said, let's go ahead and show off the game. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. We are going to lead off with our Drapion, and like I said, I'm completely okay with letting my Drapion get burned. I am going to knock off this thing's item. We're going to see that it is a Choice Scarf variant, obviously via it outspeeding me and me burning it, but getting rid of that Choice Scarf is nice. There's no reliable recovery on this, which is great, so if I do end up getting up my rocks with my Landers, or Sandstorm is up, this thing is just constantly going to be getting chipped down. I don't think he's Wisp Pain Split Rotom at all. So this next turn, I am going to bait for that poison, try and get that Poison Fang off, which we do get, which is awesome, and it ends up tricking me and taking my Black Sludge, which is insane behavior, by the way. So the fact that it tricked me and took my Black Sludge, which it saw, maybe expecting me to pivot out because my Drapion can't do much, is great, because now it's going to take Black Sludge plus Poison every turn, and there's no recovery on this thing, and there's no really way of keeping it healthier than Wishrachi, which is completely fine. So this next turn, I am going to pivot out as it doesn't do much to me. I'm going to get into my Latias. I don't think it's going to be Thunder Wave as well or anything like that. It's play Volt Switch Hydro. We're going to go for a Shadow Ball into this Reuniclus as it sets up a Trick Room. Now, knowing this is probably an OTR set, I am going to pivot out into my Drapion on this Shadow Ball. Take it pretty darn well right there. And then from here, he is going to pivot into Fortress as I pivot into Togekiss. The reason I went Togekiss here is to scout for like a Focus Blast or something like that, because then the next turn I could Roost into Air Slash. But honestly, this Pokemon is so weak, I'm not super worried about it hitting me with a Gyro Ball under Trick Room. As you're going to see, it does 41, but Fortress is terrible, so I'm going to be able to Flamethrower it down. And this next turn, I can just Roost up and then KO it the next turn if he wants to stay in. As we're going to see the Reuniclus come out hard as I Roost up this next turn. Probably trying to sack it off, but I'm just going to be able to Air Slash. And because I'm modest and offensive and he's probably offensive, we're going to take it right out. Next up, Jirachi's going to come out. I go into my Rest Registeel because I know he can always beat any Rachi 1v1 pretty easily, unless it's like a Cosmic Power variant. But we see via the U-turn that it doesn't. And this next turn, this is really sad, because I just shit-talked Fortress, and I have Registeel, and also very passive Steel type. And in my head, this turn happens, right? So I go into my Jirachi check and Registeel. Rachi turns out into Fortress, and I'm like, word, no shot I don't kill it from 13 with Earthquake, right? I have to do at least 13. I can prevent a Spike, whatever it might be. And my Registeel's actually in a really good position. I go for an Earthquake, and I do 10%, and a Spike goes up, which is really unfortunate, which means this might even be a roll. Thankfully, we get a crit, so we'll never know if that was a roll, but that was really sad how little that did. Now we kind of just have to live with the Spike up, which isn't the biggest deal in the world. I'm going to sack off my Drapion, as I don't see much use for it anymore. He makes a good play and gets up his rocks instead, but I don't really see much use for it anymore. We don't really beat or check anything, especially this low. I would have to kind of Healing Wish it up. So I'm okay with just getting a knockoff and trying to get some information on this Hippowdon, as we do end up knocking off and seeing that it's Helmet. So Poison Fang was probably my better play if I knew it was Helmet, but I didn't really have a way of checking and guaranteeing that. And I didn't think like Helmet was like super obvious guaranteed bring. Now it was good into me, but I wasn't like 100% convinced that that had to come, if that makes any sense. This does give me that free switch into Heracross, and from here, I could just throw off a Bullet Seed. There's no reason for me to Swords Dance in case he's like a Whirlwind variant, especially with these hazards up. And I can just 2-hit KO him with a 5-hit Bullet Seed, guaranteed. So he's going to Toxic me. That's fine. I'm really not too worried about it. And this next turn, we can once again just throw off a Bullet Seed. He pivots into Jirachi. I'm fine with him keeping that Hippo, because nothing on my team lets that thing, like, recover up, I guess, other than my Registeel. He goes into his Jirachi, and you're going to see, he takes, like, 33% from that Bullet Seed, which is great. I mean, he dies to close combat, and depending on his spread, I can live this hit. So I'm going to go ahead and stay in and just go for it. Even at 45, you can see this Fire Punch only does 42, and we are going to knock out the Jirachi with close combat. So Heracross putting in a ton of work, even in just the first game that we had it, basically killing the Hippo and knocking out that Jirachi. And from here, it's a pretty simple game. I just go into my Latias, I click Choice Spec Psychic, and I win the game. That is just about it. We can win pretty easily from this position. Everything is in range. We are Choice Specs, and we lived a Scarf Terrakion hit, so we were fine in that regards. And yeah, we're gonna walk away with a nice 4-0 dub week 1. Latias put in a lot of work, but really it was honestly mostly the Drapion and the Heracross putting in a lot of work, and they're the guys that died that game. So pretty happy with that one. We can jump on to week 2. Alrighty, guys, week 2 comes along. We're going up against Matthias and ADV. You see his team right above me with Salamence, Vaporeon, Hariyama, Armaldo, Credilli, Smeargle, Alakazam, and Big Pikachu. Now, obviously, you see a couple ones that are on our team in the Salamence and the Hariyama and things like that. We did 2 draft pulls for ADV just because there's not a lot of Pokemon, to be completely honest. So having 2 draft pulls was kind of a needed thing. But he has a pretty cool idea, obviously, getting Mence plus Hariyama. But he has some cool other mons like Vaporeon, which is a little bit more of a sturdy Ice Resist for Mence, which is really, really annoying, obviously. He has good hazard control. He has double Fossil from Gen 3, which is pretty funny. Big Zam, which is honestly a demon of a Pokemon. Very tough to switch into. And yeah, a lot of cool threats. But we have a pretty fun team this week, and I'm pretty happy with how this build turned out. We have a pretty defensive Wish-Teching Salamence with Dragon Claw, Toxic, Wish, and Protect. There's not a single Dragon Resist on this team, so I was pretty comfortable with going with this set. As well as Toxic to wear things down like the Vaporeon, Cradilly, things like that might want to switch in on us and try and take 2 hits and things like that. So Wish Tech is obviously good, and honestly, you're going to see offensively this thing can go very well with our last member on the team. Then we have, again, another Pokemon that goes really well with the last member of the team. We'll talk about that first. We have a Baton Passing Volbeat, which really makes it to where Jolteon, Mint, and Celebi can thrive and do incredibly well. We're Thunderbolt, Ice Punch, Tail Glow, and Baton Pass. So offensively, we're okay, but we can pretty much get a Tail Glow and Baton Pass out against a lot of members on his team and put in a ton of offensive pressure. In particular, our Jolteon, which Thunderbolt plus HP Ice, if you look at his team, he just doesn't have a switch into that combination of moves whatsoever. +2 Thunderbolt and HP Ice, 2-hit KOs or Okos his entire team. So with a little bit of chip or behind a substitute, we're in a really good position with our Jolteon here, and we can do a lot of damage. We also have Toxic again if we don't get that pass into us to wear down things like the Cradilly and things like that, which again is very nice. We have an Ice Beam, Spikes, Rapid Spin, Explosion, Cloyster. We are pretty actually offensive. We're adamant with Ice Beam because we still kill things like Mence, but I think I had enough attack to like Oko Vaporeon or something like that after like a spike or 2, who knows, something like that. And yeah, it's here to kind of soft check Mence if it's a physical variant, as well as get up spikes, and boom, which is pretty nice, obviously. Then we have a pretty offensive but pretty defensive Hariyama with Brick Break, Knockoff, Rock Slide, and Toxic. Here to just disrupt and be a general nuisance against the opposing team, which is obviously really nice. Rock Slide hits the Mence decently hard even after Intimidate, especially if we get a Toxic on the first time we switch. And you see there's a lot of status on this team. Actually, I think this is the last status we have on the team, which is a little bit scary into Hariyama, but I'm actually not too worried about Hariyama. If we play this team correctly, at the very least, between Mence and Celebi, we should be fine. We just have to make sure Celebi doesn't get caught with a random HP bug. But our defensive Salamence is honestly probably going to be our pivot into it, not our Celebi. But regardless, this is pretty solid. Brick Break plus Rock Slide hits a lot of the team very hard. Knockoff gets rid of items, and Toxic is here to spread status. Then we have a pretty bulky Leftovers Calm Mind. Sorry, I can't talk. Celebi with Giga Drain, HP Ice, Calm Mind, and Recover. This is going to be our main pivot into something like Ments, especially if we are Ments. Alakazam, if we get status off on it with Hariyama, or even Salamence, something like that one, they're super special. You can come in and Calm Mind and beat it 1v1 very easily, even if it is a Calm Mind variant itself, so getting a Toxicon I think is really important, very nice. And HP Ice hits the Ments very hard, obviously, at +1 will do a lot of damage to potentially kill it if it's more offensive. And then the Volbeat that we talked about a little bit before. Okay, let's get rid of the picture. Let's get back into the game screen. So we're going to jump in. ADV is, it's an old gen format with no team preview. So the first mon you have on your team is the first mon that's going to be set on to battle. So we are leading with our Salamence. It gives me good intim on whatever leads and allows me to kind of pivot around, potentially protect. We're going to see Vaporeon come out. I'm going to go into my Hariyama as I am thick fat. I'm going to take this to hit very, very well. And I can just kind of go for, I believe, a Toxic this first turn, expecting Ments to come in. Or if Vaporeon wants to stay in and get Toxic, that's great for me. So I'm going to be able to get the Toxic off on this thing. It's going to HP flying into my Cloyster, which is fine, showing it's more of a physical set, or at least, at the very least, mixed, so it doesn't have a move that can OHKO me right now. So I can just get up a Spike on this Smeargle and be able to go from there. Next up, on the Smeargle, I'm going to go into my Volbeat as I get Spiderwebbed and Imprisoned. And from here, a lot of you guys who have used like Smeargle or even Mew before know what this set is. This is like a trapping set with Imprison, Trapping move, Transform, and you know, something else. So make it to where you kind of PP stall your opponent, they can't do anything, and you can exploit them with their moveset. For some reason, though, this does not work in Gen 3 the way it works in pretty much every other gen. Now, I don't know if Gen 4 and 5 work the same, but I know at least Gen 6 and onwards, if you imprison something, it will still work, it just, nothing will apply if you don't have the same move. In this gen, if you use Imprison, it will not work. It will fail if you do not have any similar moves. So obviously, this thing is not Thunderbolt, Ice Punch, Tail Glow, Baton Pass. So this Imprison failed. What he was going to do is he was going to Imprison and then Transform, and I was going to be PP stalled and locked out of being able to do anything, which is a really cool set in theory. But since the mechanics work differently in this gen, my opponent didn't check that, and honestly, I didn't even know that. So it's not even like I can't believe you didn't check that before running this. You know what I mean? But regardless, since they didn't know that, this is actually going to give me offensive momentum, as I am going to Tail Glow right here, and then I'm just going to be able to Baton Pass. They are going to Transform, but that's fine, because I go into my Jolteon, and looking at the Calyx, Volbeat is so weak that even at +2, he can't break my sub without like a max roll from Ice Punch. So this gives me a position to just win the game right here. We are going to see a Baton Pass as the Cradily is going to be able to come out, and I'm going to be able to break through this team immensely. I'm going to just Hidden Power Ice, get the 68% off. Sorry, my cat's like up here for some reason. I'm going to get Earthquaked and my sub's going to break. But again, I'm just going to HP Ice, knock this thing out. If I got the crit the first time, it was super over. And we're going to see Armaldo come out. And it's very interesting because the only other mon that could have taken a hit on his team was Hariyama, if it was a bulkier Hariyama. But him not going into it kind of tips me off that it didn't come, which makes sense because that means Alakazam is in the back. And I think if like Hariyama came over the Smeargle slot, this game would have been a lot different. But this is going to essentially just seal the game. There's not much this team can do to stop this +2 Jolteon from going through and just smashing through. And it kind of shows that like even more like I don't know like how broken Baton Pass is even in like a very restricted way in a format that's been using it a ton in standard and draft. It can just clean through teams. You're gonna see there's not much my opponent can do. We never even had to reveal the Celebi or anything like that, and we're just kind of able to push through his team and win the game. So GG's to Matthias. This one was fun for me, obviously, but it sucks because the Smeargle set was really, really cool. It just didn't work out because of the mechanics of the gen, things like that. It just shows you kind of have to like, you know, look into things like that just to make sure. So yeah, that being said, we could jump onto our week 3 game. Alrighty guys, week 3 rolls along and we're going up against Matty Brawlick here. Pretty cool opportunity. Not often you get to go up against one of the Draft League greats, so I really want to show up and show out in this game, especially in ORAS format. It's pretty cool, even if it's a casual league. I really do want to win in this game. So we have a pretty fun squad. Again, his team kind of changed a lot in between when we played in the actual matches, so I'm not actually going to pop his team up on the screen because I know it's a ton different. I know he ended up having like a Feraligatr and shit, so like the team's a lot different than initially when I played it. I'll at least show you my team. You can see the 6 that he brought in: Suicune, Nidoqueen, Clefable, Cobalion, Starmie, and the Weavile. We can jump into my team right here. We have a Choice Band Landers. Other than, I do remember this for a fact, other than the 6 that he brought, which he doesn't have a ground immunity or resist, his only immunity that he owned was a Mesprit, which does not appreciate taking Choice Band U-turns or knockoffs. Isn't a great lander switching in general. Now, it can threaten me out with like Ice Beams and things like that, but kind of made Choice Band EQ very free. We also have U-Turn Knockoff, like I said, for those Pokemon. Knockoff also gives me just like a raw, like a ton of damage on things like Starmie wanting to come in, you know, obviously killing them if they're a little bit more bulky and they can take that Earthquake. But really, I mean, even then, I'm just clicking Q if I'm expecting a Starmie to come in. I'm not expecting to chase Choice Band DQs and things like that. We also have Boom, because it gives me a little bit more damage on something like a Suicune if I know it's not a Tech Suicune, or a Calm Minding Clef, or things like that. Maybe a Shuca Berry Nidoqueen in the endgame. If I don't know it's Shuca, I'll probably just Boom on it and just get a KO that way, which is definitely very nice. We have a very, very bulky Heracross, where Close Combat, Bullet Seed, Rest, and Sleep Talk. It's honestly a great defensive pivot in this game. It takes on things like Cobalion. It takes on things like Weavile very well. We take like a Choice Band Air Release after Rocks pretty easy, which is really cool. And honestly, we check Suicune very well as well. Between Rest Talk and Bullet Seeding through and just having great natural bulk, it doesn't really break through us with Calm Minds Up and things like that, which is really cool. Now, we don't really break through things like Clefable very well, but we didn't really break through them in general very well. We don't have like the Smart Strike Iron Head coverage that we would have in a current gen. Actually, I don't think it gets Iron Head. I think it gets Star Strike. I don't remember if Heracross gets Iron Head Gen 7 onwards. I know it gets Steel coverage in general that would let me push through Clef, but it's actually one of like the best like true counters to my Mega Heracross. I can maybe run with like an SD Facade set or Return or something like that and maybe break through a Magikarp Clef, but regardless, I feel like a more defensive variant of this Mega Heracross was good and still broke through everything not named Clef. I mean, look at his team besides the Clef. Close Combat Bullet Seed hits everything very hard, so I really like that aspect of it. We also have a Dual Stabs Tricking, Healing, Wishing Latias to get things nice, back, and healthy to do a little bit of work later on in the game. We have a Rocky Helmet Wishing Alomola with Waterfall, Wake Up Slap, and Knockoff. We're pretty spadef though, because we take on things like Nidoqueen very well. We knock off items. We have Wake Up Slap in order to make it to where something like the Weavile can't set up a Sword Stance on us and break through us in that way. Honestly, just kind of OHKOing through it, which is nice. And then Waterfall, because we're a little bit more physical. We can spread Nox and just be a general nuisance, which is nice. Then we have a Lumberry Drapion, pretty decently offensive, with just 3 attacks plus T-Spikes. If we can eliminate that Nidoqueen and knock it off, like knock off and EQ it and take it out or something like that, and get T-Spikes, this team really doesn't appreciate it. Things like the Suicune, and Unaware Clef, Weavile getting chipped down, things like that is very nice in conjunction with all our helmets, including this helmet guy right here with Iron Head, Stealth Rock, Earthquake, and Thunder Punch. Now, we're a little bit weak to things like Starmie. We don't particularly switch well into Starmie on this team, especially because we're not a bulky Latias, but I think it's something that we can definitely play around and hopefully, you know, do well with. Okay, that being said, let's go ahead and jump on into this one. We're going to go ahead and start off the game. I am going to lead off with my Landorus, as if something more slow and passive leads, like the Nidoqueen, I can U-turn out on the Nidoqueen. If it's like a Shuca Berry variant, we'll kind of be able to tell that immediately. But if something like Cobalion leads to get up rocks, I can EQ it. If something like Clef leads to get up rocks, I can just EQ it. And put myself in a really good position offensively. There's only a few things that really threaten me out immediately. And things like the Starmie, Suicune, and Weavile. So I figured that was obviously a nice lead. We are going to see a Cobalion lead. I am just going to throw off an EQ turn 1. I know that I live at HP Ice from full, guaranteed, because Cobalion is a very strong Pokemon, and I can kind of either pop a Shook on this or do a ridiculous amount of damage, which is obviously nice for the rest of my team. Things like my, you know, Drapion, things like that are a lot harder to switch into. So we are going to EQ on a Sash. Cobalion just ends up getting up rocks. It's unfortunate that Sash, because it's going to get a lot more mileage out of it than I really thought he would. He could have been a Shuka variant, but I didn't think Shuka would really come here. It didn't have much utility because it doesn't really like threaten Landorus because of how weak it is. This next turn though, I am going to make a play of pivoting out into Alomola to scout for an HP Ice, because I don't want to take that hit if I don't need to. We are going to see a Taunt come off here, which is a bit unfortunate, but not the end of the world. And then this next turn, he is going to miss a Toxic as we get off a knockoff. And this is a really, really, really unfortunate turn of events right here to start off the game. For Maddie at the very least, because getting a poison on this Aloe while it's taunted makes it very, very passive, very, very obnoxious to deal with. So we're going to go ahead and take this thing out for not much of a cost. As the Starmie is going to come out, it is going to Toxic me, but I am going to knock off its Colbur Bear here, at least giving me a little bit of information, knowing if it's Life Orb, whatever it might be, because I know I could take a hit from it. I'm pretty darn spadef. And if it's not a Toxic variant, or it's not Recover, it's like an offensive set like that, knocking off its like Life Orb as it throws off a big T-Bolt is really valuable for me, as I can pivot out then and maybe take it on with my Aloe a little bit later on. I can also still Healing Wish up my Latias and go from there as well, which is nice. or Healing Wish on my Alomomola if I need to get that Toxic off, but it probably won't end up happening that way. Clefable is going to come out next, as I am going to throw off a big Wish and go right out into my Drapion, as I do want to throw off a big knockoff into something and get rid of an item. Mana makes a good double here, though, and getting into the Nidoqueen, sensing that I am going to kind of pass that very free Wish. It would have been nice to go into something like Landers, but I can't really risk like a random Ice Beam coming out off of the Clef, and I feel like Drapion was just a little bit safer of a play at this point in the game. So we're going to have our Latias come out right here, as an Ice Beam comes right out into it, which is a little bit unfortunate, but not the end of the world. Sorry, I'm getting a text right now. Sorry. Very, very unprofessional by me, but we're going to take 48 from an Ice Beam, showing us not a Life Orb variant, which is at the very least very nice. I am going to drop a Draco. I wanted to drop a Psyshock here, or a Psychic here, but I felt like if like an aggressive Weavile came in, I could get Pursuit Trapped pretty easy. And even if the Clef came in, I was kind of in a position where I was forced to double out anyways, and he kind of soft boiled up, which is nice. And you know, we can go from there. So I'm going to double out here into my Drapion. Again, trying to get a little bit of mileage. We're going to see a big Fire Blast come out and miss. Now, if that's a Life Orb Clef, that definitely would have chunked me up. I could always wish this thing up a little bit later, but definitely a pretty unfortunate miss, to say the very least, as we are going to be able to knock off the Shuka Berry of this Nidoqueen, which is going to be nice because I might be able to outspeed it. If I get a little bit more chip on it, it's guaranteed in range of an Earthquake a little bit later on from us. So I am going to go into Aloe, as we do see a big Ice Beam pop here on an expected maybe Lando pivot or something like that, as we are going to Sludge Wave here as I throw off a big Wish, and I'm going to stay in on an Ice Beam and throw off a big hit. Now, this play took me a little bit while to think, because, you know, the obvious play would be to try and pass a Wish into either Latias or into my Landorus on a potential Sludge Wave or Thunderbolt, but I felt like he might go for an Ice Beam, so I made it, and I stayed in and made the right play. But here, I make a really stupid play and going for a knockoff. If I expected him to stay in and make that Ice Beam middle ground, or that Ice Beam call, and catch me, you know, switching out, I should have always Waterfalled right here, because it just did a ton more damage. I've already knocked this thing off, and if I'm expecting that middle ground to stay in, I might as well get Waterfall damage off on something coming in, even if he does make a weird switch out. And I'll be able to get a lot more momentum there. I'll put this thing in guaranteed range of my Drapion later on, things like that. In range of my Heracross, really in range of a lot of things. But I throw off a knockoff here, and I don't really get much out of making that pretty aggressive play right there. I'm going to get down to 42, as he is going to pivot out into the Starmie as I go into my Latias, which is good, at least in this instance. I am going to make the pivot out here, as a Toxic comes out into my Drapion. Does end up missing. I wanted a Draco, but since this thing showed to be Colbur Toxic, it was probably a little bit bulkier on this set, and I don't think I would have KO'd it from this range. So next turn, I am going to take a big Hydro Pump, get up a T-Spike right here, expecting the switch out, but unfortunately we're not going to see it, and this just is going to show me just losing a ridiculous amount of momentum right here. A lot of momentum that I gained in the early game is just going to go away really fast here, because now another pump is going to come out. It's going to do 24 to my Aloe, but this is such a passive switch because I just let a Recover, or a Rapid Spin pop right here as I throw off a Wish, and don't really get much out of this scenario, as a Hydro Pump is going to come out. It's going to knock out my thing, and I'm going to be able to throw off a big Draco right here, or a Healing Wish, sorry, into my Drapion, and get it back into full. But, like, I got back into my Drapion, and I got healthy again, which is nice. But I sacked my Aloe for no reason. I got up a T-Spike for no reason. It seemed like a very passive, pointless play, or set of plays, and it didn't get me much, is what I'm saying. Thankfully, I am going to be able to knock out this Nidoqueen with an Earthquake, so if I do get up that T-Spike, I'm in an okay spot. And honestly, from this position, I'm still looking pretty okay. Something like Suicune wants to come in, I always just knock it off. Something like Clef wants to come in, I can knock off and like Poison Jab it. If the Starmie comes in, I can knock off, and if the Weavile comes in, I still have a very healthy Registeel to take it on. So not the biggest deal that I end up losing my Aloe. I just have to be very careful with my Registeel, obviously, as well as my Heracross. So Hydro Pump's gonna come out. He is going to miss, which is really unfortunate, because as you're going to see, this is actually still pretty darn offensive, and it would have 2-KO'd me very, very easily from that point. I would have kept it very low and been able to go into something like my Heracross and thrown off a big hit, because I do live a Psychic from full, guaranteed, especially because it's not Life Orb, but it's still definitely not a good turn of events for my opponent, because they're going to lose a lot of speed control right here, for realistically what's no reason at all, as I am going to make the pivot out into my Registeel here on this Weavile, as an Ice Crash is going to come out. Again, this is completely fine, though. I can just go ahead and go for an Iron Head as the Clef comes out, and Uh, that's super effective damage, which is really, really sad, to be completely honest. I was pretty offensively invested. What was my set here? We're on it. I was adamant, by the way. It's an adamant Registeel, 104 adamant. So, really doing absolutely nothing. Thankfully, this thing isn't doing that much to me with the Fire Blast. Only 31, which is nice. And I'm going to be able to force a lot of damage on this. And another thing to keep in mind is, if I force damage on this, and keep it low into a point in which that my Heracross can come in and revenge it, Heracross can just win the game on its own as well, because I just close combat and Bullet Seed everything, and then the game's over from there. So if I keep this thing below about 40%, I should be in a pretty okay spot. As right here, I am going to kind of just spam the Iron Head, as I do unfortunately kind of get to a point where he gets off Fire Blast and he gets a burn, which is going to make it to where I can't really keep this thing low enough for me to gain much out of this scenario, or at least put myself in a position where I can win with what do you call it, Heracross right off rip. So I am going to go into Landers though, because this does guaranteed net me a KO if he wants to stay in with his Clefable, even if I don't kill with a Band EQ and it is like random like 3 attack soft boiled Clef, and it has like Ice Beam coverage, I'll put it in range of my Heracross and go into it and get into that scenario that I was in before. If it goes Hard Suicune, it's 2-hit KO'd, which is also very good for me. And if it goes Hard Weavile, it just dies, obviously. It's not a Choice Band Landers. So, Suicune is going to come out hard right here. It is going to take a clean 97 from Earthquake, but that obviously 2-hit KO'd regardless, so that one really doesn't matter too much. Even after a Protect, we should be able to 2-hit KO that thing. Weavile is going to come out next. I am going to sack off my Drapion right here in order to try and get a free switch into my Heracross, as he does miss the first X Crash, but he's going to be able to knock me out with a knockoff the next turn, which is fine. We go back out into Heracross. Right here, I was kind of debating for a while here as to what play I should really make, because at first I was kind of looking at this scenario and I was like, okay, if he goes Clef, do I lose the game, right? Because I can close combat this thing, kill it, and basically secure win, because Bullet Seed into Earthquake always kills Max Fizdef Clef. But I was thinking, is there a scenario in which I should be doubling into the Clef, expecting that to come in, forcing a KO with Earthquake, and then having my Heracross, because I know this thing isn't banned, and I still live in Aerial Ace from 76 or whatever it is, you know? But the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I didn't think that that was needed, because if Clef comes in, it has to soft boiled anyways, so what I can do is, as I close combat into that Clef slot, I can pivot Hardlanders because it either Moonblasts, or it soft boils, and then I throw off that Band EQ, and then I put myself in a good position anyway, so it kind of eliminates all purpose of me really needing to double in this endgame. So I almost like super overplayed in this instance. Thankfully, I kind of caught myself after sitting here for an hour thinking about what play to make, as I am just going to go ahead and throw off a close combat right here as an Aerial Ace does come out, and I am going to be able to knock out this Weavile from full. Crit definitely for sure mattered. That was a roll in his favor to live. I'm just kidding. So from here, I am just going to start throwing off some big Bullet Seeds. And you're going to see, because we're more defensive, we're actually not doing that much damage overall. And he's going to kind of just start clicking Bullet Seed over, or clicking Soft Boiled over and over again. Kind of trying to stay as healthy as humanly possible right here. And then I see a Calm Mind, and I go, ooh, shit. That's a little bit scary, I won't lie to you. I'm going to pivot out into my Landers right here, as I know that he has to soft boiled right here in order to stay out of range of my Heracross, to it KOing it. And I felt like this would be my best instance to get into my Landers and guarantee getting an instance where I could just boom and knock this thing out. If it didn't die to boom for some reason, I could always get back into Heracross and pick it off with a Bullet Seed as I'm faster and live to Rock Switch in. So yeah, that's going to be our game. This was not my cleanest game, and I definitely got pretty fortunate in this one, I won't lie. But I'm obviously really happy about the win. I was happy that Heracross put in some work, Choice Banders put in some work, got a nice boom kill. I think I played really bad with my Aloe. I played really bad around the Nidoqueen in general, is something I'm not super happy with. Like, I played really bad around the Nidoqueen and the Starmie. But you know, never punished. So we're able to take home this one, move to a 3-0 record, which is obviously nice, and we go into ADV Week 4. Be right back with that. Alrighty, y'all, Week 4, we're going up against Zern. He's got a terrifying ADV team you see right above me, and Raikou, Dugtrio, Dragonite, Kangaskhan, Vileplume, Tentacruel, Slowbro, and Combusken. In particular, Raikou is super nasty against us. It's really difficult for us to take on and try and beat, especially defensively. Now, it is kind of walled or like pigeonholed into either being HP Ice or HP Water. However, HP Ice is super free, and since he has Dougie with it, and he can always trap our camera up to a little bit later on, which again is not very ideal for us. So we have to play very particularly in this game to win. And then DD Dragonite can just like take home the game if my Cloyster ends up getting chipped. And he has a lot of ways of doing that and a lot of ways of pressuring. I think Raikou plus Dragonite is really, really good. It's a lot similar to like our Jolteon plus Salamence, core right there. So it could be pretty terrifying. You show the team that I have, though. I have T-Bolt, Thunderwave, Baton Pass, and HP Ice on our Jolteon. Baton Pass is a great tool to get away from Dougie. And then T-Bolt plus HP Ice honestly hits the team pretty darn hard. Now Vileplume can check that just well naturally. And Raikou can as well, obviously. Raikou kind of sits on us forever. But Raikou doesn't necessarily immediately break through us, and we can always T-Wave it and try and deal with it accordingly. If we could bait a T-Wave on it, we're actually not in the worst spot in the world, obviously. So that's nice. We have a DD Wincon Ments. If we could chip down the Slowbro, this thing can actually go crazy. We just have to get the Slowbro low, which is a little bit hard for our team to facilitate. If we can do so, though, if we can get some Spike, get off a hit, maybe force a Boom on it with our cameras, our Ments can do a lot of work against the squad. So we have to just position that and then get into a spot where it can DD up and win the game. We have an Endure, Salac Berry, Celebi with Psychic, HP Grass, Endure, Calm Mind. The reason that we are Endure Salac Berry is for the Dugtrio HP Bug bringing us down and revenging us. We can Endure, get our Salac, and then revenge it, which is obviously nice. It's a great way of breaking through his dual water core of Tentacle Slowbro as well as the Vileplume. It really breaks through a lot of his fat in general. Things like Spadef Kangaskhan can kind of take it on as well, but for the most part, we should be able to break through his team decently. And it's a good soft check to Raikou depending on the set. This is going to be our main Raikou response, minus the stupid Dugtrio kind of being able to trap us. And that's another annoying thing about ADV, is until he reveals it too, I can't even guarantee he has Dougie. Now, I know he should bring Dougie, especially in a matchup like this, but it's just, I don't know, it's a weird little mind game that you kind of have to keep in mind. But we do have EQ, Flamethrower, Explosion, HP Ice. HP Ice is where Dragonite can't set up on us uber freely, but Boom is also a great way of, getting around that. If we get rid of the Dugtrio, another thing that he's going to switch into, probably his next most likely thing, is going to be the Slowbro. And if I get a bait a Boom on that thing, I'm in a really good position because then my DD Ments can go crazy. Like I said before, he doesn't really deal with it very well, especially Lumberry Ments, which I kind of forgot to mention for a lot of the stats on his team, whether it be T-Wave Raikou, but he should be HPS on that thing, or Sleep Spouter, Stun Spore Shenanigans on Vileplume, just Thunder Wave in general, and it can be pretty annoying, as well as, different burns and things like that. So, but regardless, Cameron's a good way of potentially forcing damage on the Slowbro if we get rid of the Dougie. And you have an Ice Beam, Explosion, Spikes, Endure, Salac Berry, Cloyster with, ridiculous offenses, very, very offensive and very strong. If we can Endure on the Raikou, throwing off a big hit, we can throw off a big Salac Berry Explosion if it's not a Protect variant, which I don't think it's going to be in this game, to be completely honest. So you can catch that thing with a max attack, or close to max attack, Naughty boosted Explosion, which is really nice, and we can spike up and get a bunch of damage off there. With 212 too, with the Naughty, we're going to do a lot of damage to the Slowbro as well. I really like to OHKO after 3 spikes or something like that, who knows. Regardless, lastly, we have just a 4 attacks, pretty darn bulky Harrion with Brick Break, Knockoff, Rock Slide, and EQ. Knockoff is to remove items, particularly, again, on the Slowbro. If we get rid of its item, we're in a good spot. We can Rock Slide the D-Knight, we can Brick Break and Earthquake everything down. Now, Slowbro obviously checks us very well, but we have a few things in our team, obviously, that can deal with Slowbro well, and Celebi, Cloyster, and Jolteon, so I'm not super worried about it in that regards. Now, we can jump right into the game really quick. As you can see, Jolteon was our lead in this game. We are going to lead off with the end of the Kangaskhan. Unfortunately, I don't really want to stay in on this thing as it can kind of blow through me really easy. As I am going to go into my Cloyster and take a Toxic. Not the end of the world. Kind of makes your Salac Berry strats a little bit less useful. As I am going to spike up on this Tentacle coming in. And being that I'm poisoned now, I honestly felt like it was in my best interest to just boom on this thing. Because one, I don't really switch into it very well if you look at my team. Between, Jolteon, Ments, Camera, Cloyster, Hariyama. Nothing really wants to take a Surf plus a Sludge Bomb or anything like that. So, I definitely want to let it Swords Dance or anything like that. Or an Ice Beam is another option, obviously, for my Mets. So what I'm going to do is, knowing this thing can't OHKO me, even with HP Grass or Electric, I'm just going to boom in its face and take a KO. He can spin away this Spike, which is a little bit annoying, the fact that I don't get Spikes the entire game, but getting this boom off is obviously very, very clutch in being able to, knock it out and take it down. An alternative I could have done is maybe spike up until I was in range of my Salac Berry, and then thrown off a big Bloom, and gotten one spike off on it, out of it, but again, not the biggest deal in the world. Next up, though, I am going to go into my Hariyama as he goes into Kang. That's fine. For me, obviously, I just go for a knockoff. Into the Slowbro. only do a clean 4%, but getting rid of this leftover is going to be incredibly clutch. Again, for that men's endgame is what we're kind of shooting for. Celebi is going to come out right here, so we're going to see a double into Kangaskhan. I'm going to pivot into Hariyama on a potential Toxic or return or whatever it might be, because they can take it very well and throw off a big Guts boosted hit. We're going to see the Slowbro come back out, and, you know, unfortunately that doesn't do very much. But again, that's unrecoverable damage. I'm slowly putting it in range of the Ments, and the more hits I get on this thing, the better. As well as more leftover turns for my Hariyama, which is great. The next turn, I'm going to go Celebi on a big Ice Beam. Only take 40, which is nice. And throw off a big Calm Mind here and CM up into a point in which I can throw off a big +1 Psychic. Again, chipping all these things down to a +1 Ments range. Hopefully putting myself in a good position. Gonna be able to throw off another Psychic, get it down to about 42. Or 22 as it goes for a rest, which is really unfortunate. I'm gonna pivot out right here into my Jolteon. As the thing stays asleep. And it's gonna wake up pretty much immediately, so I'm not too familiar with how rest mechanics work in Gen 2, or Gen 3, but that's one rest, that's only one full rest turn, which is something I'm pretty curious about how that ends up working. So maybe, like, the first turn you rest counts as the first rest turn, I really have no idea, but, or maybe it's just 1 to 3, like, random, like, you know, regular sleep is, who knows, though. I'm gonna Baton Pass out into my Hariyama again, taking a bunch of unnecessary chip on everything. I think me not really knowing how the sleep mechanics work kind of boned me there, because I felt pretty comfortable going to Jolteon and getting off 2 Thunderbolts, but no, it's only 1. It's not really worth it anymore. If I knew it was only 1 turn, I probably would have gone on to Hariyama again, but like I said, not the biggest deal in the world. I'm going to Brick Break into this Dragonite right here, do a decent chunk to a nice little 22. And unfortunately, I just can't let this thing set up for free. I'm going to let my Hariyama go down. This kind of puts me in a terrible position against Kangaskhan, puts me in a worse position against things like Raikou, which I could have taken a +1 hit from, because I'm going to be able to go to my camera up right here and threaten this thing out with an HP Ice. The only issue is Dougie's going to be able to come in. It's going to be able to revenge me with an Earthquake, and I'm going to be in a really tough spot. So I'm going to go into my Ments right here. I'm going to make a double into Celebi as the Slowbro comes out. And I'm going to be able to go for a nice Calm Mind. The only issue is this Raikou is also Calm Mind. It's a lot faster than me, and I can't really Calm Mind past it. Now, I was hoping he would just throw off a Crunch right there, put me in my Salac range, and I get up another Calm Mind. I'm at +2, and I do a lot of damage to where my Jolteon can come in afterwards. Unfortunately, it doesn't go down like that, and you're going to see we're just going to kind of get swept by this Raikou. My only out at this point is going to be T-Wave parrying this thing and then getting up a bunch of Dragon Dances with my Ments, but it's not going to go down that way. I don't really play for diff right here at this point because I want to play for the win, but T-Bolt's just going to knock me out, and that's it. We're going to lose the game, unfortunately, so pretty bad beat down there. We got our asses kicked, which is unfortunate. We're 3-1, though. Not the end of the world. We just gotta kind of keep on trucking on and keep on moving on. We're gonna go ahead and jump on to our next game, though I do want to mention that we actually end up skipping 2 weeks. Our next 2 opponents, I think it was Kara and LRXC, both end up having to forfeit to us. So we move on to 5-1 after getting smashed like this. I feel like I didn't play this league for like weeks and weeks because of this. But our next game is like 3 weeks later. Let's see, June 7th to July 3rd. Wow, because I played this game early. Yeah, so we didn't play for like a month, which is pretty crazy. But we're gonna jump on to week number, this was 4, 5. Wait, so week 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we played 5 and 6. Week 7. We're jumping on to week 7. I'll be right back with that. Alrighty, guys, week 7. We're going up against Geronopuff here in Oras. He has a pretty terrifying team, as you can see right above me. In Mew, Megalopony, Hydreigon, Metagross, Tentacool, Gligar, Whimsicott, and Lantern. Now, for this game, we have a pretty simple game plan. We're here to break through with things like Scarf Heracross, Heracross, and potentially our Latias, and win with our Landers. But regardless, we are a SD 3 attacking Heracross. Now, he has a pretty good check to it in Gligar. It actually takes in stomach hits quite well, but if we can knock it off on the first time it comes in, and then SD kind of pass it and just kind of blow through it that way, or we're not SD, we're just Bullet Seed. If we can knock off and Bullet Seed pass it a little bit later, we'll be in a decent spot, and in general, we can exploit it pretty well, and if we get a knockoff on that, it really helps out with things like our Scarf Landers and things like that, but Gligar in general is a big nuisance. We also have an Earthquake knockoff, HP Ice U-turn Landers. If we can knock off that Gligar and force it in with our Landers, again, we can HP Ice it, catch it, and KO it potentially or do a lot of damage, put it to a point it can't really switch in on anything on our team, which is nice. Other than the Gligar, Scarflanders is really free in this game. It's a good Lopunny pivot since in Gen 8. Scrappy doesn't block Intimidate, so we're able to Intimidate and at least take an Ice Punch if we really need to. Outspeed things like Landorus, outspeed non-Scarf Hydreigon, outspeed Tentacruel and Metagross and Lantern and all these different threats to our team, as well as that's it. And Ground Resist Whimsicott isn't great. He has a couple of immunities, but I felt like that Scarf was pretty okay in this matchup. We have a Choice Scarfing, 3 attacks, Trick, Lottie with just stabs, Shadow Ball, Trick. We can hit things like Metagross very hard with the Shadow Ball on the switch. And if it's not AV, it's taking a ton of damage. And if it is AV, it's unrecoverable. Everything else doesn't really want to take a stab move. And then we have Trick to stop things like a Calm Minding Mew or Cosmic Powering Mew or something. Actually, doesn't get CP this game. Gen, I don't think, but regardless, like a Calm Minding, like boosting up Mew and things like that, it's a great way to stop that, or even like a weird stockpile Lantern or something crazy like that, but I don't expect that, obviously, which is obviously great. Really, Trick is for Mew, in case Mew gets out of hand. We have a pretty Spadef, but also Rocky Helmet, Togekiss with Air Slash, Roost, Heal Bell, and Flamethrower. There's a lot of status in Dronapos team to potentially be thrown out between Scald Burns and Toxics and Sludge Bombs and Will-O-Wisp from Mew and Toxics from Gligar and Stun Spores from Whimsicott and a bunch of different things like that. So I wanted a way to, heal off those status conditions to where I'm not in a terrible position a little bit later, to where I didn't need to run Healing Wish on my Latias, which is great. It lets me play a lot more offensively with my Pokemon, knowing that I can let them get status, because if not, if I let everything get burned and toxic really early, they don't have a way of getting rid of them, the game's just over. So Togekiss is very important in that regard. It's also a great Hydreigon check, so we just need to make sure we check the Hydreigon well as well. And we have a Fizdef, a Alola. This thing is here to check Metagross, but especially the Mega Lopunny. It absolutely eats hits up from that thing. And between Waterfall, Knockoff, Toxic Wish, this thing is incredibly annoying. We still Stomach Hits from Lantern really well. We can knock off items, chip things down, wish up the rest of our team, and Toxic things down as well. I'm honestly fine with trading a Toxic on the Mew in order to get a Toxic on us, just to kind of chip it down and make it to where it's not as scary against the rest of our team. But yeah, maybe that's just me. And then we also have an SD Lumberry Drapion with knockoff Poison Jab, Sword Dance, and Taunt. And it's something like that Gligar wants to come in, we can like SD knock off past it and do a ton of damage, taunt it, make it to where it can't roost up on us, which is also a great option. And really, his team doesn't appreciate switching into our dual stab combination. With the Lumberry, we can kind of avoid status from like a Wisping Mew or like a Scald Burn from the Lantern if we want to set up on that, or the Tentacruel, or whatever it might be. And yeah, that is going to be the team. We can go ahead and jump right into the game. You can see the 6 that Dronapop ended up bringing. There's no Gligar here, which was incredibly fire for me to see. No Gligar here is really nice for our team. It makes things like Landorus phenomenal. It makes Heracross just honestly an instant KO anytime I can position it in, which is, again, absolutely amazing for me. With that being said, though, let's go ahead and jump on into the game. I am going to lead off with my Scarf Landorus, as there isn't really a Scarfer that I expect to outspeed me that can super threaten me. Now, Hydreigon can be Scarf, but I expect it to be like a Life Orb set or an E-Belt set, or maybe even like a random Specs or something like that, just to try and break through things like Togekiss a little bit better. And even if it is Scarf, unless it's Scarf HPS, it's not OHKOing me in one, and that's good information to know. And, this U-turn chip is going to obviously be great for me to get right here. And if I U-turn chip this into it U-turning on my Togekiss coming in, it's at like 50% at that point. Pretty much dead. And that's the ground immunity this game. Other than that, Scarf EQ is super free in the end game. So any chip I can get on this thing is very much so appreciated. So I am going to go ahead and throw off that U-turn. See that it isn't Scarf. It does 61 damage, 61%, so it's at even less if it actually went for a U-turn. We're going to see Dark Pulse do about 21, so a lot of damage. Lantern's going to come in, but I'm going to make a nice double into my Drapion right here, because I figured the Lantern would come in, and he's not going to want this thing get knocked off if it's AV or leftovers. It losing its item is really detrimental to it. And like I said, there's not really a lot of great switch-ins to knock off. I can get rid of an item and put myself in a pretty good position from there if I do throw off this knockoff. So I am going to just throw that off. If I want to stay and try and bait a Scald Burn too, that's fine with me, because again, I got the Lumberry strapped on deck. So I'll be able to knock off right into this Tentacle, which is obviously very nice. Do a clean 36 to it. And then I'm going to go for a Taunt right here. Now, Taunt was a bit of a dumb play. I guess it covered like a random Toxic or a T-Spike or anything like that. But if I wanted to do that, I really suppose I could have just like Swords Danced and like knocked off twice or something like that, because Sugarberry and whatever. But regardless, I don't think I really needed to do that. I could have just gone into Aloe, tried to bait a burn on that, or if it got Toxic, it's not the end of the world. Who knows? Same thing with Latias, but I am going to go pivot into that right here. not get burned, which is nice, and make a nice read and go for a Shadow Ball right here, because I didn't really think there was another pivot into this. I don't think you can very willingly go high Dragon on that 39% Mon. As right here, he's going to pivot into Lantern on my Alamo. I actually said it wrong that time, it wasn't a joke. My Aloe double right here, which is a good play, obviously, because it takes Shadow Ball well and it covers me going into Aloe on this Metagross. It's honestly fine. I didn't want to risk a roll and then get Ice Punched and brought down to like 2 HP and not be able to be a thing that can reliably revenge a quick attacking Lop. So I made the pivot out into my Aloe here. And honestly, I don't take that much from this hit, so I'm going to be able to throw off a big Wish right here and get back into my Drapion. If I don't get burned, which I do, I'm in a pretty good spot. Unfortunately, we do, but it's fine. I get back up to full. Now, since I have a full health Drapion again, I'm going to just go ahead and pivot back out into my Latios and just throw off a Psychic right here. Not going to overplay any more than I kind of already have in a lot of instances. Do a nice 36 to Lantern, which is great. And then a Protect's going to come out. So it's going to show to be Leftovers Protect and very, very specially defensive, which is obviously very, very good to know for me. Mew's going to come out right here. It's going to take a clean 16 here from the Psychic and then get a little bit of Leftovers back. I'm going to get out into my Drapion. Unfortunately, you get missed with the Wisp right there. Honestly, I'm fine with this. I'm going to go for a Taunt right here on another Wisp. Again, all A-okay for me, and I'm just going to throw off a knockoff here, get rid of something's item, or chip down the Lopunny just a little bit. Oh no, I go for a double. Just kidding. So I went for a double right here, particularly maybe expecting something like a Tentacle to pivot in, or maybe even this Lop or something like that, or just knowing a double Wish probably wasn't going to come out. And I'm going to just Mega Evolve. I know I live any single hit from this thing, and I can kind of just claim a KO with CC into Pin Missile at this point, but we're going to be able to go ahead and just barely, or just break this thing sub as it goes for a sub. And I'm going to pivot out here just in case it's a like random move that can OHKO me or something like that, especially at -1. I believe he gets like Air Release or like Bounce or some random shit like that. I mean, Bounce I would be able to switch out the next turn, but regardless of -1, I don't feel as comfortable taking that hit. I take a lot more than I'd like, and I don't stay as healthy as I'd like, so I'm going to make that pivot into Lopunny at that point to see if he wants to throw off an attack. He is going to pivot into the Tentacle here, which is honestly fine with me. And then I'm going to double back out to my Latios. I'm going to catch this Lantern coming in right here. It's going to get more Leftovers recovery as I try to trick it, which obviously isn't my best play in the world. I'm going to make the double out as the Hydreigon, I believe, comes in, or the Lopunny comes in, which is honestly fine with me. I'm just going to go ahead and throw off a big U-turn here because I don't OHKO with EQ, but he obviously doesn't want to take that damage. I can get out and do my Heracross on the Mew, and despite me getting burned right here, I still OHKO this thing with Pin Missile, and I'm okay with taking the burn because I do have a way of heal battling that off. Same thing with my Aloe, same thing with my Drapion that can get burned, the same thing with really everything statused on my team at this point. So I am going to take this Wisp and eat it up in order to kind of trade for a KO on this Mew. As you're going to see, 5 hits is more than enough to knock this thing out. And we're going to be able to force a little bit of progress at this point, which is finally nice. So Metagross is going to come out. I'm going to go into Aloe right here, try and bait an attack as Stealth Rocks do end up coming out. We're going to see a Toxic pop on my Aloe. So kind of getting that Toxic going. We're going to throw up a big Wish right here, and I believe I just throw off a big knockoff as a Meteor Mash comes out. Helmet Chip's going to chip him down, as well as my knockoff, knocking off the Leftovers. Basically meaning this Metagross is dead. I believe I throw off one more knockoff in order to kind of either knock out this Metagross or take an item from something. So we take the Choice Specs from the Hydra, which is obviously great. I am going to go for a Wish as this thing goes for a Flash Cannon, expecting my Togekiss to come in. And now I can pretty freely get into Togekiss as I can live this Flash Cannon, only take 39 and get all that health back and just throw off a big heal belt, which is really, really clutch with everything that was status in the back with Drapion, Heracross, and Alomomo all being status. It's all gone now, which is great. I'm going to be able to pivot right out into my Latios as a Scald comes out, which is, again, completely fine with me. Again, if I get burned, so be it, but no, not the biggest deal in the world. I'm going to throw off a big Draco as this thing protects, and then throw off one more one as we get off a clean 48 here as another Scald's going to come out. I'm going to kind of be able to force to pivot around this Lantern a little bit as it is proving to be incredibly annoying as another Scald comes out here, which is definitely a smart play. And from here, I'm going to be able to just throw off a big knockoff. I don't want to overplay and expect like this thing to come in. I guess I could have Poison Jab, but getting rid of that thing's item if you want to stand would have been really nice. I'm going to go into my Togekiss and get a nice free Roost off here as the Metagross is going to come in. Maybe expecting to be faster than my Togekiss or something like that, but we do have a little bit of speed on us. I'm going to be able to knock out the Metagross with the Flamethrower as the Lantern is going to come out next. I'm going to pivot right out into Latios here in order to take that Scald, and I'm kind of reserved to sacking off Lottie at this point in order to guarantee get some Draco damage off on this thing, and at this point there is no Dragon Resist, or Psychic, sorry. Man, I thought Draco right here. But look, Hydreigon's gonna come in here. I probably should have Draco right there, because it was basically, like, super chipped if I did, but oh well. And here, Flash Cannon's gonna come out. Gonna do clean 37. It does not 2-hit KO me. At least it doesn't get the roll 2 if it was one. Then we're gonna go ahead and be able to roost up and stay out of range of that thing guaranteed now. Obviously, minus crits. Gonna roost up again. Lantern's gonna come in, once again, being an absolute nuisance. Oh, yeah, going to my Latios. Don't get burned here. Gonna get left at 2%, which is obviously incredibly clutch. And from here, I can just throw off a Draco until I end up dying. As it's not going to be able to get super healthy on me. It's going to knock me off the next Scald. I'll get a nice 47% off on this Lantern here with that Draco. Really chipping it down for the rest of my team to put in a lot of work. Going to let said Heracross come in, throw off a big Bullet Seed, and get a nice easy KO here on the Tentacruel. As that first crit obviously didn't matter. Each hit's doing 14. So we definitely would have had more than enough damage to knock it out with 5 hits, as we're going to knock it right out. Next up, Hydreigon's going to come out. We're going to go right back out into Togekiss. Flash Cannon comes out. It's just Togekiss is too damn bulky and doesn't really care about that damage. We're going to go ahead and roost up to kind of try and stay out of range of that Hydreigon throwing off another Flash Cannon. Go hard Drapion, because if I get burned, it's not the end of the world. I can just sack this off and then go into Heracross and pick another KO. But if not, then I get a nice hit off on something, because I am going to knock off again. Again, I probably should have Poison Jab, but not the end of the world, to be completely honest. So we're going to go down to a Drain Punch right here, but I can go onto my Landorus, and this puts me in a pretty good position because I can just U-turn for free. Now, if Lopunny stays in, I can just knock it out with an EQ, or I can just knock it out with an EQ. If the Lantern comes in, I U-turn, I just go into my Heracross, and then if the Hydreigon comes in, I U-turn, I just win with Earthquake the next time I come in. So, U-turn kind of just put me in a no-lose scenario. U-turn's going to come out. Gonna go back out into Heracross, gonna throw off another Bullet Seed, and there's nothing that can take this hit, so Lantern is going to be the sack of choice for our opponent, which makes sense because it doesn't really beat too much, or it doesn't beat my offense at the very least. They're gonna go Hydreigon. I'm gonna go into my Togekiss on a Flamethrower. It's gonna do a nice 22, which is pretty dope. We're gonna throw off a Flamethrower as it cannot miss, knock out this Hydreigon. And then from here, Lopunny is going to go first up. Now, the reason I went for Flamethrower on Hydreigon as well is because if it was Roost, I could just, and it roosted right here to get healthy, I could just Roost up and then eventually, you know, kind of whittle it down with Air Slashes and things like that in the range of my Landers and stuff. Like, it was never really getting out of range if it was Roost. And, yeah, that was just kind of my main thought. So, and Flamethrower just doesn't miss, so it puts me in a pretty okay position regardless. Now, if I did miss and they went for, you know, a kill on me and knocked me out, it really wouldn't have been that big of a deal because I could have gotten the Landers. Same thing with this Lopunny. I don't really need to, like, Oko it if it misses an attack or misclicks. I can just kind of throw off a Flamethrower, break any random subs, which it has shown to have already, then go into my Landers and win the game. So, we're able to take home a nice 3-0 win here in Week 7, moving us to 6-1, I believe. We're obviously clinched for playoffs. We got one more ADV game before playoffs, and then got some pretty crazy playoff games. So, be right back with week number 8. RDL, week number 8 coming along against Gohan here. Now, Gohan is, I believe, confirmed out of playoffs at this point, and we're obviously confirmed in. But I do really want to win this game, obviously, because it puts me in a pretty solid contention for getting first seed. And the way playoff works in this league is that the higher seed always determines the format in which you are playing in playoffs. So if I'm 1 seed, I get to pick my matchups the entirety of playoffs, which is extremely valuable for me. Now, if I lose, I could drop pretty darn low, in all honesty. So winning will at least secure me 2 seed, I believe, but a potential for first seed overall, which is really, really important for me. So we're going up against Gohan here. You can see his team above me in Skarmory, Flygon, Swampert, Jolteon, Miltank, Hitmontop, Banette, Farfetch. You see the team that we're rocking with. We're rocking with a Surf, Ice Beam, Rapid Spin, Spiking, Cloyster. Decently offensive, decently bulky. Really annoying for his team to deal with. His Spinner is not a very good Pokemon, so I'm not super worried about it in Hitmontop. Actually, I don't know if Hitmontop gets Spin in this gen. I don't know. It should. It's like the Spin Pokemon. Then we have a 3 attacks, especially offensive Salamence with Dragon Claw, Flamethrower, and HP Grass, as well as Toxic. Couldn't really go with a physical set this week, obviously, with Pert, Flygon, or Pert, Swampert running around. But it honestly beats his top 3 really well, and Pert, Flygon, and Skarmory were able to kind of break through them all with Stab plus Flamethrower, Hidden Power, Grass, which is great, and nothing else really switches into it. And we get Toxic to done things like Miltank that want to try and take us on defensively, because they could probably take 2 special hits pretty well. Then we have a HP Grass, Calm Mind, Recover, Psychic, Celebi, decently bulky but decently offensive still. Again, does a really well if we can chip down this armory. It puts in a ton of work, and we can find a lot of setup opportunities, which is great. Then we have a Thunderbolt, Hidden Power Ice, Toxic, Substitute, Jolteon. Again, puts in a ton of work offensively. Everything that we don't 2-hit KO kind of gets 2-hit KO'd after Toxic Chip, which is great. Now, besides the Swampert, obviously, I went HP Ice because I figured Flygon was a little bit more of a nuisance for my team than Swampert was, especially with the other Pokemon that I had. But again, I can Toxic the Swampert down, chip it down with HP Ice just throughout the game, and then hopefully put it in range eventually. Or it'll get lured by something like Salamence, or take a ton of damage from Cloyster, or something like that. This is at least the main plan right now. Then we have a Resto, Chesto, Hariyama with Bulk Up, Brick Break, Hidden Power Ghost, and Rest. We're pretty offensive, but also very Spadef here on this set. HP Ghost is great for Burnett, and then everything else kind of gets rocked by the move Brick Break. Now, he has a Skarm, obviously, which can take us on, but if it's not Whirlwind, we can beat it 1v1 pretty darn easy, which is great. Also, Toxic us too, like a +1 or +2 Brick Break Guts. It's going to do a lot of damage to it, regardless if it's bulk. And remember, its only reliable recovery this gen is Rest. So if it's not like Rest or Chester or Rest Talk, we very much so whittle it down in order for Hariyama to put in some work. And then we just have, again, a 4 attacks, Mega Camerupt, pretty darn offensive with Flamethrower, HP Ice Explosion, and Overheat. Really just kind of a nuke versus my opponent's team in general. The only flying resists are going to be things like Pert, as well as Flygon, which again, I'm pretty comfortable with beating Pert with Celebi, plus our Cloyster, plus our Immense Lorient in, and things like that. Plus I can always boo on it if I really end up needing to on the switch-in. This is going to be a solid pivot into something like Jolteon, unless it is an HP Water variant. And if that's the case, then our Ments can take it on a little bit better, and our Celebi just hard walls it. So I really expect it to be HP Ice instead, as its hidden power coverage option. So yeah, that being said, let's go ahead and jump on into it. We can go ahead and start it off. We are going to lead off with our Cloyster into the Skarmory. I am going to try and throw off a Spike right here, as it does end up going for a Taunt. Really, that's not the biggest deal in the world, because I do 1v1 this thing pretty easy. I throw off an Ice Beam, just do a little bit of damage into the thick fat Miltank, and we get a big freeze right here, which is really lucky for me, I won't lie. The Taunt wears off immediately, which is nice as well for me. I'm going to be able to let up a layer of spikes, and kind of take advantage of my opponent being frozen in a place here as I get up a second layer. And from here, I'm totally comfortable just throwing off a Surf. You see it does 56, so it's pretty offensive Cloysters, doing a lot of damage to this Miltank. It must be a speedier variant or something like that, and not have a lot of Spadef, because that did a ridiculous amount. Or it's Fistef. So we're able to get up 2 spikes and KO the Miltank due to a pretty lucky freeze there. As a sub is going to come out from this Jolteon, as it's going to throw up a Wish as we Flamethrower, and then pass out right into Flygon, as I am going to double into my Celebi, scouting for an HP Water, and just kind of pivoting and see what they want to go for. I'm going to my Cloyster on a potential HP Bug, as I don't want to take that hit. As a Skarmory is going to double in on my Celebi, and this obviously, of course, covers that. He makes a good play by going for a Spike here, trying to pressure me a little bit, knowing I probably don't Spike myself, so he doesn't need to taunt me. They throw off a big Surf for a good 45, which is great, showing me a nice 3-hit KO. I'm going to be able to Rapid Spin, get away with these spikes, and then just throw off another Surf next turn. So now, obviously, he can kind of secure that he has at least 1 layer up. But like I said, it's not the biggest deal in the world. We're going to see a Steel Wing. I'm going to Rapid Spin since he's faster. I want to make sure that he only has 1 layer up maximum. And then from here, I'm just going to throw off a nice Ice Beam, KO this Skarmory, and put myself in a good position offensively, as the Jolteon is going to come in next. Again, I have a very free camera up, though. Even with the Spike up, this thing doesn't really take me on, especially because it's shown to probably not be HP Water. And another sub's going to come out. It's going to show to be a Salic Berry. I passed that hit out into the Hitmontop, which is fine. I believe I went for an HP Ice, not wanting the Flygon to get in behind a sub. As an Earthquake is going to come out, we're going to go ahead and throw off a Flamethrower, as this thing is going to knock me pretty low with an Earthquake. And then we're going to take an Earthquake right here and go down. Next, I'm going to go Ments here, and I expect to pivot out. I'm just going to go for a Toxic right here. But in hindsight, I probably just should have gone for a Dragon Claw. There's not a Dragon Claw switching on my opponent's team at this point. If I'm like a Dragon Dancing variant, he can't really like allow me to set up for free right here, so throwing off an attack is just my best bet. Unfortunately, I go for a Toxic and I miss, which is not great, but I should live a Rock Slide, so that's the biggest deal in the world, unless we get crit. So we're going to go down, but we've gotten really lucky this game's ourselves. Plus, I'm not super worried about this thing, as I do have my Celebi, which is going to revenge crit the next turn right after, immediately, as a Burnett is going to come in and prove to be the final member of my opponent's team. Cloyster takes this thing on very well. I can scout and see if it's a Choice Band variant or whatever it might be. And from here, I believe I just throw off a big Ice Beam, as it does net me a KO guaranteed pretty much. Flygon can come in next, but I live and makes Flygon hit pretty darn well as an HP. Grass or Electric is going to come off here. Gonna throw off an Ice Beam one more time, knock out the, what do you call it, the Flygon. Out comes Banette one more time, showing to be leftovers. I Ice Beam because I'm faster, bring it down 53%, take a Shadow Ball to the face, and then I'm going to go into Jolteon and just finish it off with a Thunderbolt and grab a nice win. Move to 7-1. Unfortunately, though, we did not get 1 seed. We actually ended up getting 3 seed because the way that this league kind of does things, instead of going immediately off of differential, it kind of goes off of like your strength of schedule and your quality of wins, and there's like a whole formula to it and things like that. And I think Python's had a little bit better, harder of a schedule than I did, to where his win quality was just a little bit better than mine. And it moved him up to 2nd seed, so I ended up getting 3rd seed, which is pretty unfortunate. You're going to see throughout playoffs. Going 7-1 and not being able to pick your format is pretty unfortunate. At least for round 1, we will get to. And we'll get into that one because it's a rematch against Puff. But there's a lot of mind games that kind of go into picking that format and kind of going with that, which we'll jump into in just a second. Alrighty, guys, round 1 of playoffs rolls around. We're going up against Puff. Something we just played a couple weeks ago in ORAS, and if you guys just remember what I just said, I think in the last vid, is higher seed always picks the format, which is a little bit interesting in this scenario, right? Because I think that Puff is much better than me at ADV. I think he just won the last Emerald Open, like the tournament that we didn't end up winning. I'm pretty sure it was him, or it was like the first one. I don't know. I know in general, though, he has much more knowledge of the tier than I do. So this is a pretty ballsy pick on my end, at least in my opinion, because while I feel like I have a better like overall shot of winning an ORAS, which we did in our first matchup, obviously, I felt like I brought my best team, and I felt like there's some things that he could see in his build and his matchup to better refine his draft and his build and things like that, and honestly give me a little bit more of a tough game. So I actually wanted to switch it up and go ADV and go and not have a rematch, which I'm not a big fan of. But again, we're in a format where he's probably much stronger than I really am. So there's a lot of inherent risk when it comes to doing so. So we're going to have to be very, very careful about how we approach this matchup. You can see his team right above me. It consists of Zapdos, Registeel, Blaziken, Espeon, Glalie, Kingdra, Gligar, Blastoise. Lots of big, scary threats. We have a pretty darn bulky, but pretty darn offensive regular camera with Flamethrower, HP Ice, Earthquake, and Explosion. Really does really well this game, honestly. Flamethrower plus Earthquake plus HP Ice hits a lot of things very hard. If the Gligar wants to come, we can HP Ice that thing and do a ton of damage to it, but it's also not like an Eviolite kind of mon this gen, obviously, with it not existing. Boom is a great way to catch something like Blastoise after like a spike or two and just Oko it. It's a great mon to kind of exploit Registeel and Zapdos. Not exploit Zapdos, because Zapdos can definitely like push through us over time with like Drill Pecks, which I do expect because we have a Celebi. Or even just constant damage plus spikes, because it's kind of hard to stay healthy. But regardless, it's pretty solid. We check like non-EQ Blazikens, but they do expect to potentially be EQ in this matchup as well. But yeah, it does pretty well this game. It's just a nice bulky lead, deals with a lot of things. Now the double water is annoying, but if we catch those on the switch, like I said, with a boom, they're not taking that hit, so that's obviously really nice. Then we have a DD offensive Mega, or I keep saying Mega, Salamence with Lumberry, Intim, HP Flying, Dragon Dance, Rock Slide, and Earthquake. Does really, really solid this game if I can find that position to SD up, or DD up, and I have a little bit of chip on that Zapdos, and maybe a little bit of chip on that Registeel and things like that, which I think is definitely possible. This thing can honestly just kind of win the game at +1. Also Blastoise, if it's a Fist-F Blastoise, that's where like the double boom core of Camera Cloyster is going to come into play alongside spikes and things like that. So we really just need to kind of play our cards right and hopefully set up for an endgame Mence DD sweep. Then we have a Celebi. We're leftovers. We're Psychic, Hidden Power Grass, Recover, and Leech Seed. You can kind of just spread Leech Seeds around this whole team and really, really whittle it down. Things like Zapdos don't have Roost this gen, so it has to be Rest in order to really heal itself up outside of leftovers, so Leech Seed is going to be great for that. It's great for whittling down the Registeel. It's great for whittling down the Espeon, the Kingdra if it wants to stay in on us for some reason, or the Blastoise, but it's honestly a great check to those really, really offensive, scary waters in Kingdra, and the really bulky waters in Blastoise and things like that. So I can do really well this game and just be a good general nuisance. We also have a sub T-Waving HP Ice Jolteon. Again, very, very solid. We can sub down on things like Zapdos potentially, even maybe even a Registeel or something like that, and throw some T-Waves, throw some Thunderbolts, and then the ground type is Gligar, which isn't the bulkiest thing without an Eviolite this gen. So you can kind of nuke through that thing with an HP Ice, which is really nice. So Jolteon looks really solid offensively. The only check to it is going to be like a Spadef Registeel, but if I chip that thing down and it's also Spadef, then my Meds goes a little bit more crazy. We also have Resto Chesto, Bulk Up, Hariyama with Brick Break, Rock Slide, Bulk Up, and Rest. We can rest on things like Zapdos coming in after we get a Bulk Up or 2 off, and throw off a huge +2 or +1 Rock Slide, really chipping it down, like I said, with no reliable recovery. The Flying type in Gligar is going to be neutral to Rock, but still, it's not going to break through us very well. We could potentially 1v1 that, depending on the set as well. If it's like a Sword Stance variant, we definitely don't, but otherwise, we're still not going to appreciate taking like a +1 or +2 Rock Slide. Same thing as we can set up on more passive things like the Registeel and the Blastoise. And then the real only fighting resist outside of Zapdos and Gligar is going to be the Espeon, which doesn't appreciate taking hits in general. And again, I'll take any chip I can get on it. It's just a good defensive pivot into a lot of things on this team. It's a good Ice Resist as well. Pivots into Glalie and can exploit that as well. Or force it into a Boom, which is always pretty advantageous for us at the very least. And then we have a Cloyster with Leftovers, Shell Armor, obviously, Ice Beam, Spikes, Surf, and Explosion. Here to get up Spikes and boom on one of the waters. That's really its whole job here in this game. It's not to, defensively check anything long-term or anything like that. This is much more offensive game plan with things like Camerupt and Cloyster booming, Celebi chipping things down as well as Hariyama, and then Jolteon and Meds hopefully combining for a nice W here in the end game. But yeah, that being said, we can get rid of the image, we get rid of this tab, and we can jump right into the game. Obviously, we are going to be leading off with our Camerupt into this Espeon. Pretty solid lead right here. We could just off a free EQ. Forcing in this Blastoise really is the only switch into my Camerupt on his draft, in all honesty. So being able to chip that thing down is great. We can get some information on its set. We see that it is not Leftovers. I'm going to make the switch into Celebi, as Dronepuff is going to make a double into the Espeon. This is fine, though, because I can take this thing on pretty solidly. There's not much it can do to really stop me. I can just throw off a big, Leech Seed and try and chip this thing down. Unfortunately, we are going to miss our first Leech Seed, which isn't great. We're going to see an HP Fire come out, and if we hit that first Leech Seed, we were in a phenomenal spot right here. It really didn't break through me all that well. But now, with this being the case, I kind of have to recover stall a little bit. You're going to see after Leech Seed, it looks like he's going to be able to knock me out or be very close to it potentially be a roll. And I don't want to give up this thing just yet because it still is a great check to Blastoise and a great check to Kingdra. So I like to actually go Hariyama here to kind of mid-ground pivot and see what this thing wants to go for. Unfortunately, a Calm Mind comes out, which definitely makes sense on my very passive recover. So maybe I should have recovered one more time. Who knows? Regardless, though, we're going to go into Hariyama here, and we're basically going to sack it off. The crit obviously didn't matter at +2. Then we're going to get into our Jolteon, and thanks to the mechanics right here, we're actually going to get a little bit more damage via Leech Seed, which we wouldn't in other gens, so that's nice. Now, Jolteon's job here is, now that I know it's Calm Mind, and it's not going to, it obviously isn't faster than me right now, I can kind of sub down until this thing is eventually in range of a Thunderbolt, so I can kind of just spam that move. We're going to go ahead and continue to sub down until this thing is going to be in range. Now, keep in mind, we have not seen an item yet, and you're going to see we get most of this health back pretty much immediately. As right here, we're going to go ahead and sub once again, and then right here it goes down to 26. And this is a very, very important turn right here, because you see that we don't see item right now. And despite this, what we're going to do, we're going to sub down one more time. Being that this thing is below 25, the way that, like, ADV works is, again, I could be wrong if I'm remembering this wrong. I'm sure someone will make fun of me in the comments about how, like, the mechanics work and things like that. But I'm pretty sure how this interaction works is that this kind of reads it as the end of the turn, or this is when a berry would pop if it is a berry, and Leech Seed takes place after all damage calculations, after all berries and things like that. Hence why we got Leech Seed at the end of the turn after our Hariyama died. So this Espeon is a Salac Berry, but because it's above that 25% or whatever it is right now, it's not going to get its Salac Berry right here. It's not going to pop it, which would have been detrimental to me. I might have just lost the game right there. I would have had to pivot around it, and it would have been a whole mess. So it wouldn't have been good. He was just one read away from beating me there. So Gen 3 weird mechanics kind of bailing me once again, which is obviously very, very nice. And we're going to be able to knock out that thing with a Thunderbolt and take it down, which is great. Next up, Glalie comes out. It shows to be Quick Claw, another weird Gen 3 mechanic. I saw this because I think Jason got double Quick Claw in one of his games during one of the season. Quick Claw is an item in Gen 3, but it does not show you that Quick Claw is popping. However, since Scarf doesn't exist, there's no way that Glalie can be faster than my Jolteon. I think I joke about it and say, like, it's Scarf Spikes Glalie or something like that in the comments below, or in the game chat. This is actually going to be a Quick Claw Glalie, which is potentially really scary because it gets up a spike right here as I throw off a big Thunderbolt. And this is a 2-hit KO, but if he gets the, Quick Claw again, he can either get up another spike or more than likely just boom and knock out my Jolteon, which would be really detrimental. But there's not really a lot of ways I can play around that, and not a lot of ways I feel comfortable pivoting around this thing booming on my team, in all honesty. So I'm going to kind of take a gamble a little bit and really just hope for the best and hope that I don't get Quick Claw boomed on right now, as we are going to click Thunderbolt and be faster than the Khlazic, which is really nice because we're able to take that thing out for the price of 1 spike, which I'll take. 1 spike isn't going to end the world versus me. Kingdra's going to come out next, and this thing is probably a Rain Dance variant against a team like mine. After a spike, depending on its EV spread and if it's modest or whatever it might be, Ice Beam is looking pretty threatening right now. Surf plus Ice Beam kind of just sweeps through my team. So I'm going to go for a Thunder Wave on my Jolteon right here, trying to pair this thing and really slow it down in the weather right now, so that I can come in and recover with my Celebi, and then get off a Leech Seed and kind of go from there. So I do go for a Thunder Wave. Fortunately, it shows to be a Lum variant, which is not fun, as a Rain Dance is going to go up. Now, thankfully, I do live a Surf from this range, so I can just stay in and go for a Thunder Wave once again. Again, chip this thing down, and then move to 30%. And I can throw off one more sub just to stall a turn of rain, which is obviously very nice. And then from there, I can just throw off a big Thunderbolt, get off some damage before I die, unless I get a big crit, and just knock that thing out completely. This is going to force in a Registeel, which I'm going to get a nice 30% off, which is always really nice to get some good chip on this thing, because it's also going to award me a free switch into my camera up. I'm in a pretty good position at this point right now, because I can just EQ for very, very, very free. I don't think that a Zapdos is going to want to come in on me, especially because I can pretty well check a Zapdos, especially from full, and especially if it comes in on a Flamethrower. So I definitely expect a Blastoise to come in, where I can throw off a pretty free Earthquake and go from there. We do a nice 31%, which is great. I don't need to boom on this thing just yet, though, as he is going to make the double into his Zapdos, which is, again, completely fine. I'm just going to try and leech up on this thing and recover stall it, as we unfortunately are going to miss our lead seed. And this is really unfortunate, because we could have basically recover stalled that thing, or at least chipped in range of our Ment. So it's a pretty haxy game all around right now. I am going to save this thing, as I can still recover up on Blastoise and Registeel pretty darn freely, and kind of 1v1 those guys unless they're rest, which is obviously great. So I am going to switch out and save my camera up, as right now I believe Blastoise is going to come out. I think I HP Iced, which is a pretty passive play in all honesty. If anything, I should have probably Flamethrowered. It would have done a little bit more damage and baited to burn or something like that, or just boomed. But I don't need this thing to boom just yet. I can go into my Cloyster, as if you look at the rest of the team outside of Blastoise, it doesn't really beat anything. Now, it can hit them hard on the switch in, but there's no other opportunity really to switch in, I guess. And Registeel can probably just beat me 1v1 if it's like a Thunderbolt variant or something like that anyway. So I figured Cloyster is my best bet. I'm going to take a lot of damage from that Surf, but what I can do here is I can live this next one from this very fast Blastoise and then just knock it out with a Boom, which is great. Nothing really wanted to switch in on a Boom or a Surf, so Registeel's going to come out next. I go into my camera up. It's going to boom on my Camel, which is not nice, and I'm going to be able to pivot out, go out into my Celebi. I'm going to get a little bit of chip with a Psychic, bring it down 37 pretty low, and go into my Ment, and it's kind of do or die here. Now, I believe a good majority of the time, I think I can always live a no special attack Hidden Power Ice, and I don't remember his exact investment. I think this was a roll for him to knock me out with HP Ice, but I felt like it was just my safest play to go for this right here, as I am going to just throw off a Rock Slide, because 1, I can flinch him, and 2, I can crit him, 3, I can get the roll. I actually end up getting the flinch, so we just don't have to play around the roll at all, which was really unfortunate. This was a pretty haxy game in general. Now, if I got like off the lead seed earlier, I was in a better position. If I didn't crit his Kingdra, he was in a better position. If I didn't, what do you call it? There's a lot of instances that happened, a lot of kind of haxy, cheesy things that happened in this game, but I am definitely pretty happy with this game, and, getting a nice dub here, 1-0 against Puff in a format where he's definitely, probably better than me. So I'll definitely take this nice little upset win. And yeah, we'll move on to semifinals. Alrighty guys, semifinals, we're going up against Pythons, and despite going 7-1 in the regular season, we were actually 3rd seed in playoffs, obviously because of the strength, or not the strength schedule, like the win quality mechanic and things like that. And Pythons had a little bit tougher of a schedule than us, via that formula, even though he went 6-2, so he actually had the seed over. So despite going 7-1, we're pretty much doomed to never get to pick the format outside of round 1, because if we win this game, then we play Zern in finals, who beat us in regular season and has a higher win quality, I guess is, I think it's win quality, right? Something like that, whatever. Regardless, so we're kind of doomed to not pick the format anymore, and Pythons end up picking ADV again here, so we're playing ADV once again in playoffs. You can see his team right above me: Gengar, Milo, Heracross, Claydol, Moltres, Glalie, Mawile, and Vigoroth. Some big threats. Gengar in particular is incredibly annoying for me to deal with. I just clicked on my check to it subconsciously, but we'll get there, don't worry. Gengar can be a big threat with Wisp and Ice Punch and T-Punch and Psychic and things like that. It's weird that a Gengar, 1, plays a lot more defensively in ADV, and 2, doesn't ever use Stab, but is still such a menace in a metagame like this. So, really annoying Pokemon for me to deal with. Milotic is pretty annoying to break through, honestly. Now, I do have, like, Celebi and Jolteon, but it can just switch, and it beats the other 4 members of my team pretty handedly. So, that thing could be obnoxious. Heracross, if it clicks the right button, it's just a KO. So, I'm not a big fan of that, obviously. It can kind of just push through me really hard. And not excited about that at all. Moltres, I don't have a switch into. I just simply do not have switch into. My water is Cloyster. It doesn't resist fire. I haven't played a lot of scary offensive fires this season, really, besides Blaziken, which obviously isn't going to really take it on anyways either, so that's not a good time. Offensive fires always just are going to rip through my team, like fire plus HP Ice. Just goes crazy against me because Cameron's not the most sturdy thing in the world. Other than that, we're playing another Glalie, which is annoying, but not the end of the world, and I think we can kind of handle things, so yeah, let's go ahead and jump into our first member here, which is going to be Celebi. It's going to be lead, again, tried and true, Psychic, HP Grass, Leech Seed, and Recover. It's a really great mon to pivot into something like Milotic. It's a great way of revenging a weakened Heracross. We do not Oko Heracross in full, though, which is something important to keep in mind. We actually do check Gengar as well, which is nice because we are just bulky enough to take Ice Punches pretty darn well. Moltres can kind of bully us, but again, we're going to chip it down with Leech Seed. It does have Morning Sun. It's like the one of the 3 that gets Recovery, which is a little bit annoying, but again, not the end of the world. It honestly is just a great Pokemon against Pythons in general. It's really tough for him to switch into, and decently tough for him to break at the very least. Next up, we have Alum, DD, Mence. Tried and true. Like I said, HP Flying, Earthquake, Rock Slide, and Dragon Dance. We're here to do a lot of damage. Hopefully DD up and win the game. Once things like the Milotic, really just the Milotic, are just chipped down into range, we can kind of just Dragon Dance up on something and win the game. We just have to find the right thing to Dragon Dance up on, whether it be like Heracross, Claydol, non-HP Ice Moltres, Mawile, something like that, which is obviously really nice. So yeah, we'll go from there. We have a Spikes, Surf, Rapid Spin, and Explosion Cloyster here to spin, get up spikes, and boom on something. Hopefully, the Milotic is what it ends up booming on, but we'll see what ends up going on. We can always spin away spikes from the Glalie, potentially, and switch into the Glalie. If Glalie wants to waste a boom on Cloyster, that's not the end of the world for me as well. So something else to keep in mind. Subtoxic HP Grass, Thunderbolt, Jolteon here. HP Grass is a great way of chipping down the Claydol, and Thunderbolt really just hits everything else. There's no Dragon that we need HP Ice for, so Thunderbolt plus Hidden Power Grass hits his team incredibly hard. We could sub down on switches and just be a general nuisance. Toxic the first time as the Claydol comes in, and then from there, like, subbing and HP Grassing and subbing is going to pretty much wear that thing down to where it's dead. So that's obviously incredibly nice for us. We have a Max Speed Hirayama. This is going to be our main check to the Gengar. We are Guts with Brick Break, Hidden Power Ghost, Bulk Up, and Protect. Fortunately, I really wanted to Protect in order to get leftovers back. It really helps with some Psychic rolls from the Gengar and things like that, which means that we do not have a way of hitting the Moltres. So we need to chip down and get rid of Moltres before this thing can really go in, or at least exploit the Moltres on the double M once he figures out our whole moveset. He has to be a little careful that we're not just going to Rock Slide on the switch in, but just something to keep in mind. Then we also have our camera, as we usually do, with Flamethrower, Earthquake, Explosion, Hidden Power Rock. The reason we are Hidden Power Rock instead of Rock Slide is because I did not want to miss. Neither Hit Rock Slide or HP Rock really Oko Moltres, but they both do the damage that I needed to for the rest of my team to do well and thrive. So I was fine with HP Rock in this game because I didn't need like HP Ice or anything like that. We can Flamethrower and Earthquake most things, and then we can again catch something like a Milotic or a Claydol on a boom and put my Mence in a really good position to win the end game. So that's going to be the plan for now. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. We are going to lead off with our Celebi into a Heracross lead. And like I said, even if we are max special attack, which we aren't, we don't actually Oko Heracross from full because it's decently bulky and Celebi isn't the strongest in the world. So we are going to be forced to pivot out into Mence. You're going to see me take a ridiculous amount of damage from this Mega Horn. 36 at -1 shows me this thing is a choice band variant. So we're going to have to be very careful about how we switch around this. I'm going to pivot into my Cloyster right here on the Milotic and get up a spike here, do a little bit of chip damage to everything coming in. And you're going to see me stay in on this Rock Slide. Now this is a little bit interesting. 1, I don't expect a Brick Break. 2, I believe I can live Brick Break most of the time. Let me check. I'm actually going to run this calc right now because I'm curious if I do end up living it. Let's see. We have Cloyster. What was my set in this game? 248. It's just max HP. So let's just go. 248. Hair across. Choice band. Yes, we do always live an adamant choice band brick break from max HP, which is really important to note. Obviously, focus punch will kill us, but it's not focus punch, and there's no close combat this gen. So I felt pretty comfortable staying in and booming and trading this, because I can still use my camera up to boom on the Milo. The Milo is also going to be coming in taking spikes now every time it wants to come in, so spike plus EQ, it's all just going to be whittled down and put eventually in range of the rest of our team. So, particularly I meant. And we still have Celebi to really bully that, Jolteon. So I was okay with using my boom on this Heracross to get this big threat out of the way immediately. Rock Slide's going to come out. It doesn't flinch us, thankfully, and we're going to be able to knock out this Heracross from full, which is amazing. Moltres is going to be next up. This is a little unfortunate because we don't switch in this particularly well. I'm going to make the pivot into my camera and take 32 from a resisted flamethrower, which isn't great. My Lodic's going to come in next, and I believe I just go for a safe HP rock. Again, still whittling this thing down. Even with leftovers, it is going to take damage regardless. As Moltres is going to make the double back in here on my Celebi. Very solid play. I'm going to go for a Leech Seed because I know I can live any hit, and after... what do you call it, Leech Seed recovery and the flamethrower, I'll be able to get up to a point where I can come in on my Lodic and recover up on it, and I wanted to kind of give my camera up a little bit of residual recovery. Unfortunately, we are going to miss, which means I have to go into my camera up and took that flamethrower for really no reason. But again, it's not the end of the world. At this point, oop, didn't mean to do that. We can kind of talk about it as we get back there. At this point, I'm pretty reserved to booming with my camera up. It's a little bit more of an offensive play, but at this point, I kind of just get 2-hit KO'd by the Moltres next time I come in, so it's not really a Moltres check anymore, unfortunately, especially because I didn't get that Leech Seed off. So I feel like I need to grab my offensive momentum back in my favor, and if I can catch this Milotic coming in, I'm in a pretty good spot. And really, if I catch anything coming in, I'm in a really good spot, unless it's going to be that Gengar. So I kind of have to hope the Gengar does not come in right here. Thankfully, it does not. Milotic is going to come in, and after Spike, this is super dead to this explosion from camera up. So we've traded 2 for explosions, which is great. Gengar's going to come in. I'm going to sub just to see what this thing wants to go for. If it wants to go for like a cheeky Will-O-Wisp or something like that, I can kind of scout and see what it wants to go for. If it breaks my sub, whatever, that's fine. I'm going to get out into my check and my Hariyama. I want to cover it, see if I want to go for a Psychic. I might even just sack my Celebi at this point as well, being that the Milotic is dead. But thankfully, we're actually able to call his boom. He's going to boom on our switch-in and die right there. So 3 KOs for us, and they've all been a product of Explosion. This next turn, he is going to pivot, go into his Claydol, and again, I kind of want to just see what he wants to go for. I want to punish a spin if he wants to try and rapid spin away this Spike right here, which I don't think he will, because he only has 1 Pokemon in the back that could even be affected by it. I'm going to go for the sub, but also covered a nice double into the Moltres, which is really good for me. And from here, I believe I just go for a Toxic, expecting the Claydol will come in. Unfortunately, I do miss, which is really unfortunate, but not the end of the world, because I can kind of scout and see what this thing's spread is, get a little bit of damage on it, which is also great for my ments. I'm going to HP Grass it, do about 29, which is fine. See no leftovers, which is great to see, and then pivot out to my Celebi and basically sack it off, as I don't really need it at this point anymore either. Next up, I'm going to go into my Hariyama, try and throw off a HP Ghost right here, as the Mawile is going to elect to come in next. This is fine, though, as I feel pretty comfortable just going for a bulk up if this thing wants to stay in, but he makes a good pivot out into the Moltres right here. I'm going to pivot right out into my Ment, knowing I can take any 1 hit from this thing, as I am going to take 37, and then just go for a Rock Slide. I think the reason he stayed in here, it was a pretty tough play for him in the sense that, like, if he let me set up a Dragon Dance, I could just, like, he would just, like, lose the game. If he, like, switch chart out into his Claydol to, like, sack it off. I don't know, because I feel like it would have lived a +1 HP flying, but it might have been pretty Spadef, who knows. Regardless, he probably just did not want me to set up and wanted to punish that play, because he super won if I Dragon Danced, and he just, like, extra sensory to me and knocked me out. But thankfully, getting off this Rock Slide basically secures me the game. Mawile is going to come out next, but this is fine. I'm just going to EQ to get damage off. I actually get a crit, which is pretty lucky, but again, not the end of the world. This Claydol's going to come out next. I'm going to HP flying it as Psychic comes out, so maybe that's why he didn't go Claydol, because he didn't have Ice Beam, because I'm presuming he didn't if he didn't click it there. I'm going to go to my Max Spadef Hariyama. I'm just going to click HP Ghost, do 40%, and right here, I get a little lost in the sauce. There was no reason for me to protect right here. He's actually going to click Rest, which is a little bit annoying. It's Rest or Chesto, and this makes this endgame a little bit more difficult, as I am going to be kind of forced to spam this HP Ghost, and I was really just a Spadef drop away from being in a really bad position. Thankfully, things don't go too awry for me, and I'm able to get off 2 HP Ghosts, and get knocked out but now this thing is going to be in range of an HP grass. So we're not super punished, which is very nice. I'm going to be able to knock out the Claydol and take, again, a nice 1-0 victory home here against Pythons and move on to finals. Finals, we're playing against Zern again, which isn't fun, and I bet you guys can guess what format he elected to pick. So not as many Oras games in the season as I would have liked, but we can go ahead and jump onto that, though, and stop talking about it. Alrighty, guys, here we are. Finals against Zern. My one loss of the season is, of course, who I end up playing in finals. So that's great. Great luck for your boy. And a rematch of the one matchup we lost. So he didn't want to play Oras, which is definitely fair. He wanted to play ADV. So 3 ADV games in playoffs. Didn't really get to show off the Oras team as well. As much as I wanted to, at least. And then the other games, like the 2 forfeit ones that we got, I had some really cool teams built, so it's pretty unfortunate, but whatever. Not the end of the world. You can see his team above me again if you forgot. It's Raikou, Dougie, Dragonite, Kangaskhan, Vileplume, Tentacle, Slowbro, Combusken. I think my biggest downfall last time is that I wasn't very well prepared for something like Kangaskhan. And it really kind of showed. My entire team got whittled down with like return plus toxic. So I wanted to have a little bit better of a game plan against that thing this time and kind of go from there. You can see our first member of the team in a lead camera with Earthquake, HP Ice, Explosion, and Flamethrower. Again, does very well in this game. In the sense that it checks Raikou phenomenally, and I wanted to lead well into Raikou and not get kind of like toxic into switch into what do you call it, Dougie and Trapped. I wanted to lead well into it and kind of, you know, put on a little bit of offensive pressure there because it's a little bit harder to hard switch into Dougie when I'm not poisoned or something like that. I think if I'm max Fizz Def and it's not banned, I do live that hit. So I don't know. I felt like it was a pretty solid lead. It led well into Dougie. It led decently into things like Dragonite and Kangaskhan. Now, if it's like a mixed D-Knight, it's a little bit scarier, but at least like a DD D-Knight, it's not as scary. It led well into Vileplume, things like that. Now, things like Slowbro and Dougie are really, really annoying. Like, if it's lead ban Dougie, I'm kind of screwed, but oh well. That's information that we'll gain. We have a Resto Chesto bulking up Hariyama with Brick Brick Rock Slide, bulk up, and rest. Pretty darn Fizz Def, but also has a lot of Spud Def to take Raikou hits a little bit better. This thing is actually really good this game. It's a good, solid Kangaskhan response as well. Between bulk up and Resto Chesto, we can at least pivot in and sort of deal with it from there. We can just throw off big bulk ups and throw off big +1 brick breaks and rock slides into things. Really break through things like D-Knight and Raikou. I wish I had a lot more coverage than I have right now, and things like Slowbro are going to be incredibly annoying. But I have, again, 2 mons that can kind of catch those bulky waters with booms and really put them in a bad spot. Second of which being this Cloyster with Surf, Ice Beam, Spikes, and Explosion. Pretty darn Fizz Def, but also, you know, still decently offensive in this game with Ice Beam and Surf plus Boom, really doing a lot of damage to a lot of things. I could be minus speed 2 in this matchup pretty comfortably, which meant that I didn't need to like sacrifice any boom power, which is really, really great for me. Obviously, spikes are going to be really important. The only issue is that dual water core kind of stops the idea that I usually have of booming with a mon that's taken on by waters well otherwise, and kind of opening the rest of the team. So that can be really annoying. Then we have a DD Laments. Pretty simple. If we can find that opportunity to DD up, honestly, this thing goes crazy. I just need to chip down the Slowbro, and everything else kind of folds to a +1 Ments after a little bit of chip. Then we have Salicberry, Celebi. I think this is the same exact set as last time, except we're just like a lot more offensive this time. I think we had more bulk last time. I'm not 100% sure. But regardless, the idea behind Ender Salic is like if a band Dougie wants to come in, or just Dougie in general wants to come in and HP bug me, I get down to my Salic very outspeed and I can kill it, which is nice. And honestly, Grass plus Psychic hits this team very, very hard, which is great. And then we have a Jolteon here with Thunderbolt, Toxic, Hidden Power Ice, and Baton Pass. Baton Pass to get away from the, what do you call it? The Dougie. Toxic is to chip down a Calm Mind Raikou instead of, you know, Thunder Waving it like we had before. And yeah, Thunderbolt plus HP Ice hits things very hard outside of the Raikou and things like that. So, that being said, let's do it. We can jump into finals here. You're going to see we are going to lead off with our camera into a Tentacruel lead, which is really unfortunate. We're going to go hard Jolteon here because I can take a Surf pretty decently and grab some momentum with Baton Pass, which is great. Unfortunately, we are going to get Toxic on the switch, taking a little bit of damage right here, but I'm pretty comfortable just throwing off Baton Pass, not expecting this thing to want to stay in. Oh no, a Toxic, sorry. I went for a Toxic, expecting this Raikou to come in. Now, if something like Vileplume came in, it's not the biggest deal in the world. We can just Baton Pass out the next turn. It's going to show to be a Lumberry variant right here, which is nice to at least pop that and gain that information. This next turn, I am going to Baton Pass, expecting him to not want to let this thing get toxic now that its Alumberry is gone. Really expecting him to pivot out into something else that can take me on, as I am going to BP out, as the Kangaskhan is going to come in and get into my Cloyster here, because I figured this is a pretty nice spiking opportunity. But the only issue with this scenario is that Tentacle just comes hard in, and it always spins away. Now, I can always use my Cloyster to boom on this thing and take it out, but that means I'm playing this entire game without a spike. And unfortunately, I do kind of choose to boom with my Cloyster. I think the better play would have been maybe doubling into something that could better take advantage of Jolteon, or just drafting or bringing a spin blocker would have been really nice. Now, I know this Tentacle has Toxic, so it can always just Toxic my Shedinja if I end up bringing that for some reason. But I could at least use it as a pivot to get out into something else, as the Toxic was supposed to come out. Like, gone Shedinja into Jolteon, gone Shedinja into something else. You know what I mean? So, maybe even like a random Celebi or something. So, I don't know. I feel like getting up a spike right there was kind of pointless, but I think it's just a structure, like a problem with the structure of team that I built. So I am going to be able to knock out the Tentacruel, but no spike for the rest of the game, which is a bit unfortunate. Next up, Slowbro is going to come out on my EQ, take a good 19%, and no knockoff plus spikes means the Slowbro is going to be incredibly annoying. I'm going to double into Celebi right here and get caught as a Dragonite comes in, go hard Jolteon, expecting maybe HE Flying or something like that. Unfortunately, a Dragon Dance comes out. Now I don't outspeed this thing, now I don't really threaten it offensively. It's not looking great. So I have a way out of this, though, obviously. I am going to pivot into my Salamence right here. Intim drop it so that I live the, what do you call it, guaranteed. The Rock Slide, and then I'm able to Dragon Dance up, potentially put on some offensive pressure myself, or just Rock Slide, as an Earthquake does come out. The only issue is that I get Ice Beam this next turn, and this is going to kind of be, this is going to be my biggest blunder of this game. It's going to put me in a pretty shitty position here. Losing Mence, 1, my win con, 2, an Intim pivot, and 3, just a great offensive piece against this team is going to put me so far on the back foot, because I really don't have a solid win con right now. If my Celebi doesn't win, I guess it could be Hariyama, but even then, Hariyama just gets overwhelmed by all the offense. It's really here to check things defensively, and kind of exert a little bit of offensive pressure, but really it's here to Resto Chesto up and kind of beat down and bully a potential Kangaskhan and things like that. So it's going to be really hard for me to win this game now, because you're going to see I'm just going to die. I don't live this hit. I get to go on the camera up here, and thankfully I can live any hit, so I go for a boom as it did a little bit more than HP Ice, and I bring that Slowbro down low, and again, this would be a phenomenal position for me if I were able to chip down, or if I were able to still have my Mence at this point. Being that I don't have my Mence anymore, and I didn't think of Ice Beam, it's kind of all for naught, you know? The rest of my team besides Hariyama can really beat this thing down anyway, so I don't know. I am going to go into my Celebi. I'm going to see this as an opportunity to potentially Calm Mind. I'm going to get crit, which is really unfortunate, because I actually probably could have used the Celebi a little bit later and tried to win with it a little bit later. Now I'm kind of like forced to use this thing to break through his team, which isn't fun. I HP Grass here, as he is going to be able to go down here. Kangaskhan's going to come out. It could have been Fake Out, but I'm kind of getting all the mileage I can out of this thing, especially if Dougie's in the back. At this point, being that I pop my Salak, so I might as well get a little bit of damage off. And I'm going to go ahead and just start bulking up in this thing's face, see if I can accumulate some boosts. If he wanted to stay in, try and Toxic and Tech and chip me down, I could have dealt with him that way. Aiku's going to come hard in, though. It's going to almost 2-hit KO me right here, as I do rest up. Only issue is I'm not EQ, so there's not really a great way of me not losing to this thing, or like not getting brought down to very low without 1v1ing this thing. So this is basically going to spell the end of the game. Even if Jolteon can, like, I guess Jolteon would have to crit through everything, because I don't actually Oko a D-Knight from full, because this thing is pretty damn bulky. So I'm going to go for an HP Ice here. Unfortunately, I'm not going to knock it out, do a clean 91, but not enough. And we're going to go down to an EQ, and that's going to be a wrap, unfortunately. We lost in finals again. I have, like, this finals curse right now, where I have just barely been winning finals lately. I keep making it to finals, keep making it to semis everywhere, but I keep dropping the ball right at the end, which is very, very frustrating. But this is a really fun league. It was a more casual league, too, so I can't be too upset. Zern played ball, and he prepped better than me. I just didn't have a great build this game, in my opinion. I didn't really have a great way of facilitating that Mence sweep that I really wanted, so I lost, and it's unfortunate, but maybe if they do another season, I hope they do another season, because I thought this format was a lot of fun. I love the multi-draft format, like the multi-gen formats and things like that. I thought this was a cool twist on it, though, instead of just being like Gen 6, 7, and 8, like Gen 3 draft and Gen 6 draft together, because they're both Hoenn formats. It was a lot of fun. So big shout out to Cass for running this league. It was a lot of fun. I know that pretty much everybody played and had a blast too. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, enjoyed our movie.
all of our games. There's a couple forfeits in the middle there, but not much I can do about those ones. Believe me, I tried to play. Hold on. Do I have the teams built still? I can even show them. I got them built in here. Let's see. I can pull it up. Bam, just like that. Yeah. So this is my folder. I think the games I got forfeited. This is against Kara. I was bringing like a punishment scarf, double dark move Lando, sub SD. Pretty fun stuff. Bunch of dark move. This was like against a Mega Zam team. And then in ADV, I was gonna bring Shedinja this week. Look, I was gonna do it. It was gonna come. Unfortunately, we weren't really able to show it off. But again, look, just try and do Jolteon. The rest of the team was very similar. Resto, Chesto, oh, Didi, look at that, offensive. But yeah, I had a lot of fun this season. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed this run. Let me know if you guys are enjoying the movies or if there's anything you'd like to see me change about them. And yeah, that being said, thank you guys for watching. See you guys next time. Later.